Bruchim Aboim to the Shloshim of our dear Rosh Yeshivah. Bruchim Aboim to all of his Talmidim, Talmidim from this year, Talmidim from past years, Talmidim that are here present, Talmidim that are following and watching from across the globe. Hundreds, even thousands of Talmidim that Rabbi Wagner was mashpia upon, taught, and the amazing impression of his life was left upon them. And Baruchim Aboim, obviously also to the entire city of Toronto, which the effects of the yeshiva, which was founded Miteich Mesiras Nefesh and was continued to run with absolute Mesiras Nefesh by Rabbi Wagner, the effects of the entire city are clearly felt. And the Baruchim Aboim goes to the entire city, which came here to also pay a tribute and to pay the respect and the kavod to Rabbi Wagner and to all of what he's given to all of us in the entire city. And obviously, Achri Nachin Chaviv is the Baruchim Aboim to his Taira Mishpacha, which came obviously to town special, his children, his siblings, brother-in-laws, his mother, his mother-in-law, which all came here together to remember Rabbi Wagner's and to carry on Rabbi Wagner's life and Rabbi Wagner's eternal Mazari B'chayim, Afu B'chayim that he left with us. You can't ignore, we all know what it says in the Zohar, and the Rebbe spoke so many times, that the day a person passes away is all the life and all the avodah that he served the Eibusha throughout his life is Oila. The Hayom Yom of Rabbi Wagner's Yahrzeit, Yud Zayin Iyar, the Rebbe brings famous Imra from the Tzemach Tzedek, B'Shem the Baal Shem Tov, and I'll just quote a short part of it. The Baal Shem Tov says, "As keiner kenish der gain, no one can fully comprehend the grace of Eitznes was liegen in a Yidden, the treasures that are in a Yid." And the Baal Shem Tov finished and says, "Ich will machen von Yidden, I want to make that by Yidden sollen geben the Yevul, was the Eibishtes Baruch Hu Aretz Chayfetz can geben." I want that it should be revealed the enormous amount of goods that a Yid can really produce. And Milanu Godel, who can I imagine more, so to speak, that the Baal Shem Tov was Matzliach. The Baal Shem Tov through Talmidov, through our Rebbe, was Matzliach. We're talking about Eretz Chayfetz. Chayfetz, we know, Pichsidis is the Inyan of Ratzin, the Inyan of Blikvul, the Inyan of Mesiras Nefesh. When we reflect on the life of Rabbi Wagner, his Talmidim, his family, and the entire city, anyone who ever came in interaction with him in any level, if you're talking about Limud HaNigla, talking about the Blikvul, in a way of Mesiras Nefesh, his Limud, Bachrim, which learned with him until 3 in the morning, Bachrim, which woke up at 4 in the morning to learn with him. You learn talking about Chassidus, Rabbi Wagner talked to us so many times, and he obviously did it himself, to learn a minor 60 times, 100 times. You talk about Avodas Hashem, hours and hours on end, Mida Yom B'Yomei and Shabbos, how much more so? Talk about his Avos Yisrael, Nesinas Atzdaka, Bli Gvul. You talk about his chinuch, his talmidim, the dedication, farbrengens, hundreds and hundreds of hours on end, Lil Shishi, Shabbos, you name it. Bachram being able to knock on his door at any time of the day, any time of the night. Every area, Mamish, Agili, Bli Gvul. We come here together, Mizoknish, the Speidim in Lubavitch. The Rebbe didn't make a Speidim even on the Fidik Rebbe. The G'dayla Chsidim, there was no Speidim. The Rebbe said, but we tell stories, and V'chai Yitin Aliboy. And we hope tonight that all of us, Talmidim, the entire city, should be able to hear stories and take V'chai Yitin Aliboy to our lives. We're going to start off with saying 2 Kapitlach Tilim. We should all have a mind. Obviously, all of Klal Yisrael, Yidden and Eretz Yisrael, and particularly here in our city, our Rav David Shachat, Shlita, Rav David Ben Sarah Sasha, should have a refuah shleima, soll sein gesund und stark, and should lead us, Yacham Mamlachte, should be zeichet to lead us to the Gula Shleima, B'meheri B'yameinu. We will ask 2 of Rabbi Wagner's sons, Shmuley and Evremi to lead us in the two kapitlach Tillim.
Shir Amalis David Samachti Bam Libes Adnei Nelech. De Sayir Aglein Misharayich Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim Abnu Yakir Shechubal Layachtov. Shesham Al Shvatim Shiftei Ya'edus L'Yisrael Ya'edus L'Shem Adinai. Kishama Yashvi Chisis L'Mishpat Chisis L'Beis David. Shalu Shleim Yerushalayim Yishla Yoyavayich. Yishalom Michael Shalva Barmanei Seich. Mana Chayver Davna Shalom Bach. Mama is Adnei Novaksha Tevlach.
think there was 3 siyum mishnayisen through Talmidim, through Mishpacha. Here in Yeshiva, the Talmidim finish their own siyum mishnayis. Start off the petirah of tonight with the siyum mishnayis. Then the Wagner will lead us. We'll finish. We'll make the siyum mishnayis.
As you all know, my father, Hareini Kaparis Mishkavi, was a Rosh Yeshivah, which part of the job description of a Rosh Yeshivah is he gave shiur nigla, he kachte nigla, he guided Bachrim how to learn nigla, and that was his main focus. As well, on a personal note, when I was teaching in nigla as well, and in order to help me with giving a shiur, I had my own time that I would learn with my father, and he enjoyed it very much, and he showed a very strong kach and very big geschmack in it. However, at the same time, my father had a very, very strong kach in chassidus, in limud chassidus. There wasn't a morning that went by that we didn't see my father learning a maimer chassidus. His farbringings were all about kaching and adding in the limud of chassidus. He lived chassidus, and he showed and lived how his whole connection to the Eibishter was through seeing the reality, through learning Chassidus. He was able to see the reality and existence of the world and of the existence of Eibishter. And the words he often used in Farbringans comes from Chassidus, that he tried to focus how al-kus b'pshitos and el-mes b'eschadshos. And he taught us that when one learns Chassidus and internalizes it and learns more and more, it eventually has an effect on him, and he notices it as well. As many of you know, my father used to send emails. In good times, when he was up to it, he sent emails on a weekly basis. And if I could say, the email was a farbringen in writing. The last email he sent was Zeis Chanukah of this year. And in it, he was discussing miracles of Chanukah and different miracles. And he shared a personal miracle that he found with himself. And he described how because of his machla this year, the past few years, at times it was very hard for him to focus. And being that he had a hard time focusing, it was hard for him to learn, it was hard for him to daven. They came with extra effort. Kislev time, it was improving Baruch Hashem, and he felt that not only was there improvement in the machla and the way he was feeling, but as well there was improvement in his being able to focus on davening and focus on learning. And in the email he writes that Yutas Kislev of this year, Yutas Kislev and Chav Kislev, he felt a miracle. He was able to spend both days. He started off his day with learning a maimer. The maimer he was learning was Pasach El Yo. Pasach El Yo is a maimer my father had a very strong kachin. I remember as a little child, my father always prepared a maimer for each of our birthdays to Chazer Balpeh, before we were doing it, and he did it for us. And I remember one year, my birthday's in Kislev, I remember one year my father was preparing the Maimer Pasach El Yo, saying it to himself over and over again in the car while driving us somewhere. Another example is, there's a story of the Rebbe Maharash, that the Rebbe Maharash once told a chassid to learn a Maimer 600 times, consecutively without taking breaks. To do that is practically impossible. So in order to fulfill the era of the Rebbe Maharash, the chassid rented a hotel room for whatever amount of days he calculated it would take him. And aside for taking breaks from eating, sleeping, whatever else, side things, he focused on the maimer entirely. When he was done, when he finished the maimer 600 times, he said that when he walked out of the hotel, and for a while, he couldn't see the world. All he saw was the maimer. And my father had a strong kach in Pasach El Yo. We learned it many, many times. Recently, he was saying that he heard of someone who was learning it, I believe it was 10,000 times, and my father was trying to emulate. I'm not sure where he got. So Yutas Chav Kislev, he was learning the Maimer, and even though he learned the Maimer many, many times before, he said that he had a personal miracle that he understood, and he felt that he finally understood the first word of the Maimer, the word Pasach. the words he used are, while learning the Maimer on Yutas Kislev, I experienced how the Maimer is opening a window for me into a higher world. And for that duration was raising me to a higher existence, which is of course the greatest and ultimate miracle. And with this he writes that he understood the word Pasach. That's what Chassidus is all about, opening the world, opening our eyes to be able to see Elokus. My father saw it in Chassidus, and he used every effort to impart this to those around him. How the more you learn Chassidus, the more you get to see Elokus. The Rebbe's Mugadik edited my Marim were divided into 6 Sfarim, and one of the there was an initiative during the Shiva to complete all 6 Sfarim before the Shloshim. So before making the Siyum on the Shnayis, I would like to make a Siyum on the Sefer Maimar Malukit, the last Maimar. I'm just going to read the last Ace. V'hinei apirish bepashtos bevata tetzaves b'nei Yisrael v'yikchu elecha gemer u'shameishi yitzaves b'nei Yisrael sheyikchu elecha gemer u'mizeh muvan gam b'pnimis inyanim zeh shameisha mitzave u'makasher b'nei Yisrael be'ifin shemamshich lem tzinoskeyach gam al v'yikchu elecha gemer Kamei kein ubnei gel meisha shabderenu chakadmor nesiderenu shavidasei le'erir u'legali sasamunah shbchol echad miYisrael shemitzad etzem anashamei be'ifin shachkach yavdu avidasei mekeach atzmam ועד שיהיו נר תמיד שאין שייך בשינוי גם מצד כיחס הגלויים. ועל ידי זה זכם בקרב ממש ולא אמיתיס והשלמה, שאז יהיה גילי אלוקוס גם מצד המטה, ויהיה אז אבס השמן והדלק סנריס, ויקחו אליך השמן גמר להליס נר תמיד גם בגשמיס. בבית המקדש השלישי, בגאול המצווה השלמה על ידי משיח צדקנו בקרב ממש. Amar Bishul ben Levi Yasda Kadosh Baruch Hu Anchel Chol Tzadik V'Tzadik Shlish Meis V'Asara Ilmeis Shenamar L'Hanchel V'Yesh V'Yitzer Seim Amali Amar Bishim ben Chalafta Limatza Kadosh Baruch Hu Kli Machzik Bracha L'Yisrael Al Hashalim Shenamar Hashem Eiz Lamiyitin Hashem Yivarech Samei V'Ashalim. Hadar Nolach Shish Tzidr Mishnah V'Hadar Cholon Dait Nolach Shish Tzidr Mishnah Dait Cholon Shminach Shish Tzidr Mishnah V'Litis Shminon L'Ibam Nedim L'Ibam Das Ervan. Kivir b'yimecha v'yisiful chashnei schaim erich yom b'yimina b'smei yishvacha v'dadnei izlamitin nevar sam v'ashalim. Yisgad al yisgad al shishmei rabba Alma dibrach yirosei v'yamach malchos v'yatzmach porkani v'kar v'shechei v'yechin v'yimechin v'chayet chol b'yis Yisrael b'agolo v'zman kar v'vimru amei Amei shmei rabba v'marach v'alamu amei omaya yizbarich v'yishtabach v'yispar v'yisrem am v'yisnasei Yishadar v'yis'ala v'yis'halol shmei b'kud shabrichu v'elam kol v'chasav shirasad shpchasav v'nacham al sadamir and ba'alma v'imru amein al Yisrael v'arabanim al tamdein v'al kol talmidei salmdein v'al kol mandaskin b'eraisa Yivasar adin divcha asar v'asar Yehelein olchein shalom rabba chin v'chista v'rachmin v'chayin erichin Mzein ervicha for kana ben kadam avoyin v'shmaya v'imru amein Yeh shalom rabba v'shmaya v'chayin tev melina v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amein Eisa shalom v'mreim of Yasa shalom melina v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amein
Pesche Bedvar Malchus, Man Malki Rabbanon. We have with us from the Ziknei Rabbanim of Toronto, has always been a Yedid, strong Yedid of the Yeshiva. He's come to the Yeshiva many times on various occasions. We'd like now to ask Harav Mordechai Ox, the Rav of the Marad Asra of Kahal Teira Semes here in the Shul, from the Ziknei Chassidim of Toronto, from the Ziknei Rabbanim in Toronto, Rabbi Ox.
Hashem, the oilam that is present here today confirms the feeling of great loss that we have. I can tell you that personally I'm still under shock and pain at the untimely passing of the Rosh Yeshivah, Rabbi Akiva Wagner, Zecher Tzadik Livrocho. The Parsha Nusa, which we read on Shabbos, begins, Nusa es roish b'nei Gershon gam heim lebeis avoisam el mishpechoisam. And the Medrash asks the obvious question. Levi had 3 sons, Gershon, Kahos, and Merori. About Kahos we read already at the end of Bamidbar. Gershon was the Bechor. So why did Kahos have precedence over Gershon? Gershon should have been the first to be mentioned. And the Medrash quotes from the words of Shlomo HaMelech in Mishlei. The Pasuk says, Yikoruhi mipninim v'chol chafutzechu lo yishvu bo. The Torah is more precious than brilliance, and everything you possess cannot be compared to it. When we mourn the loss of a Rosh Yeshivah, of a Talmid Chacham, but especially a Rosh Yeshivah, we realize what we are missing. Yikoruhi mipninim. He was the repository of so much Torah. He personified it. And as you just heard a few moments ago, in fact, I understand he was together in the founding of the yeshiva, and he certainly maintained the yeshiva and transmitted to those present, those who were learning, and those beyond, Torah and Chasidus, and was madrich them in the derech asher yelchu bo v'amase asher yasun. How much more can we experience the loss? And the Medrash goes even a step further, and the Medrash says, Chocham odif mi melech. Shnema yikoruhi mipninim v'chol chafetzechu lo yishovu loch. The king has jewels, he has brilliance, but it cannot compare to Torah. Chocham shemeis ein lo nekayoytze boy. No one can replace him. Melech shemeis kol Yisrael reuyin lemalchus. Any yid can become a melech. But to be a chocham, you have to harve, you have to live it, you have to be inspired by it, and to transmit those feelings to those who are fortunate enough to have him as their Rebbe. A melech is Odev Minovi, and the Medrash goes on to give an order of prior, who is before and who comes afterwards. It's well known, in another place the Gemara says, Mamzir Talmid Chochem is koidem lekoin gudel Amoretz. The Gemara explains that after the Avodas Yom Kippurim, when the Kohen Gadol finished and he was going out of the Beis HaMikdash and he was turning to go home, so the people accompanied the Kohen Gadol. Then Shmaya and Avtalyon, who were Bnei Gerim, they came around, and the Olam deserted them and followed them. And the king was, the Kohen Gadol, was upset, and he asked them. So he says that these strangers, they should come and they should take away the glory from Am Yisrael. And they were answered, Yuvayu bnei Talmidei Chachomim she'ovden uvdo de Aaron, and they will precede children of Aaron who do not follow in that way. We are told, we are accustomed to imitate what the Malachim do. We say with the Kedusha always, Nakdisha, Kashem Shmekdishim Oisai, Bishmei Moroim. And we find that regarding the Malachim, how do they behave? So it says that they are מקבלין עליהם אויל מלכות שמיים זה מזה, ונויסנים באהבו רשוס זה לא זה. So then I'm Chaim asks the question. Mikablim, Malchus Shemaim Zeh Mizeh, we know they're all there. They're Malchus Shemaim. Even without petirah they are Avodas Hashem. But why benoisni be'avo reshus zeh lo zeh? Somebody once came to the Alten Shotgiver Rebbe and told him that he's moving to a different place. Where should he daven? So the Rebbe told him, you go to a shul and find an individual who davens with great kavod and sit down next to him. Some of it maybe will rub off on you and they'll help you to steig. So this is mikablim aleim and malchus shemaim zeh mizeh. But Chassidus goes a step further, and we know what the avodah that was initiated by the Lubavitcher Rebbe and by Chabad, also to mikarev rechoikim, bring them tachas kanf v'heshchina, and not just rechoikim, but the avodah is also to mikarev kroivim. So that's why it says mikablem al malchus Hashem zeh noisni ba'avo reshus zeh zeh. What does a chassid know? A chassid knows that he likes to do he likes to have the letora, he likes to serve Hashem Yisborach. And if an opportunity arises, he tries to get it. But if there's somebody else, you can't chap everything for yourself. You say. That is the avodah. I have a personal bond that I had with Harav Akiva Wagner, zechron. I knew his Zayde. His Zayde was a Biyan Chusid. So it's something we have in common, Biyan and Rizhin. Yeah. And so I knew him. In fact, he davened in our shul. I suppose a little kid, he also davened here sometimes, and he knew the family. And I recognized what a great loss it is to the community at large, and to him as well, to the family especially. The Gemara in Kiddushin poses a question. The Gemara tells us, Kvareho you Rab Tarfon is Kainem is Sibyl Beis Aliyah Beluz V'nishelos Shalos V'lifneim. The Chumim were gathered together in the Beis HaKnesses there in Lud, and a question was raised. Talmud Godel or Maaseh Godel? We know we have to learn. Lilmud Hamnos Lasois, and we have to perform the mitzvahs, but which is greater? Is Talmud greater or is Limud greater? Which is precedence? Which should you do before if you have only chance to do the one? Rab Tarfon says that Maaseh Godel. You have to do them. You have to seek out a mitzvah and perform it. Rabbi Akiva Omer Talmud Godel. So the Gemara says, what happened? Nimnu v'gambu. They came to a conclusion. Talmud Godel shemevi l'dei Maaseh. Talmud is greater because it brings to Maaseh. Now this is a statement you can interpret in two ways. How do you explain it? What does the Gemara mean? Does the Gemara mean Talmud is greater because it leads to Maaseh? But Rashi learns differently. Rashi says Maaseh is greater. The object is you should be Mekayim the mitzvah. So Talmud is great. It leads to Maaseh. Rabbi Akiva said no. When it says Talmud Godel shemevi l'dei Maaseh, Rabbi Akiva, the Tosfos says that he means that Talmud is greater. Interestingly, Tosfos comes to a conclusion that says that for learning for oneself, it's obvious that Talmud is greater. Because if you don't learn, you don't know anything. You don't know how to do it. And the more you learn, you have a deeper understanding. You perform it better. So for the individual, it's better Talmud. However, if there is a choice, if you have a group of people and they have nobody to teach them, then the agmore, to teach others, that takes precedence even on your own obligation to try to reach the highest madrega that you can. Actually, we find that also because when Yidden came to Kabbalah LaTorah, there is such a concept as chivos atzmis, chashivos atzmis, and chashivos of the tzibah, chashivos rabbim. For example, even if we are not worthy, when in comparison to other nations, we by the Rebbeinu Shalom, we hope that we are worthy. Chashivos starfus is greater. So if it's lagmoreh, then you have to do that. And besides, you know, Habe Yosef and Madati Mitalmida, Yosef than even from our Rebbes. Because from the questions, getting down to understand all the details, it comes better from a discussion. So in the Psak Halacha in the Poskim remains that if there is somebody else who can do the job just as well, then you have to look after your own personal. Mitzvah Shebegufa has precedence. But if there's nobody else to teach them, you have to be mvater on your own self-improvement and to give it to others. We also had the pleasure in our shul of having the Rav Wagner visit on occasion, hold the drosha on occasion, had clear, cut and inspiring words of Torah that he conveyed to all, and we enjoyed that very much. And now when we are taking leave, we recognize the great loss that we have. And we remember the words of the Gemara. The Gemara tells us, Hanifta mechaveroi alipota ele metoich dvar halocho. If you take leave, you should only leave discussing a halacha together. Shemitoich kach zechreu. So Godel explains what does it mean. You want to talk about a person, it's not so easy to talk. So even if you want to say praise, the Gemara says don't do it. Shemitoich shvochoi bolidei gnusoi. If you want to speak bad to the Safari, you can't. But say it var halacha. If you say it var halacha, well, halacha you have to learn and to repeat. That is mitoich kach zechreu. As we live in how it is a sefer of the Olam expressing the appreciation of the Torah that was imparted by him, we say that the Rebbe should give. Koidem kol, he should be a melitz toiv for his dear mishpoche, for his talmidim, for the whole family. And the talmidim, of course, remember him as he always was and what he taught to you and inspired you with. And with that, let us hope that the Korach of the Rebbe will grant us the Bias HaGoyel V'Heirot Amen.
We can ask another one of the Rabbanim in the city, cousin of the Rosh Yeshivah, Marad Asrev, Beis HaKnesses, Beis Dave Yosef, former Chief Rabbi, Ashkenazic Chief Rabbi of Mexico, Rav Avram Bartold. Share a few words.
As I spoke with Rav Meir Wagner, the Mispal Bayas in Shul, I am not here to give a hesped, not at all. I'm here to ask a bakosh, very short bakosh that I have to the Nifter, my cousin also, and it's the following. About 12 years ago, maybe some of you know, maybe you don't, but we began a program, I think, online. It's called Ask the Rabbi from Toronto, and then it went to Beis of Yosef. And we addressed all kinds of shyness that that in the beginning, that Shlomo Miller, when he asked all of them, all the Irish not the women. Shailes from Balebatim, Shailes from people who were becoming Balei Tshuvos on their way, Shailes sometimes from children, Shailes from women, strange Shailes, but Shailes. And Rav Shlomo, together with a group of Rabbonim that we have answering those Shailes, and that's Rabbi Aaron Miller, and Rabbi Pam, and Rabbi Erentro, and Rab Kalman. Rab Kalman Ox. They answer the Shailes, and it's very, very interesting, because as I was once speaking with Rabbi Akiva, the world is changing. It's a changing world, constantly changing. There's so many things happening. There's literally millions of different doctors and technicians and engineers and people doing business that are changing the world constantly. And it creates constantly new shaylos. And they have to be addressed. And it's not simple. It's not simple to get it right. But we try to do it. So I have a bakoshe from Rabbi Akiva Wagner. He's here, no question. Of course he's here. Rabbi Akiva, I have a bakoshe from you. You're standing in the best place in front of the Eibishter. Look what you did in your short life. How much you were able to accomplish. Incredible, incredible, incredible. There's no question about it. You're standing right next to the Eibishter. Bet from the Tate Ziser. We should be matzliach. We should be zoiche Avodas Hashem. Lilmoid ulelalmit as we're ready to do lealofim. But doing it right, with no mishoilim, doing it properly, and being bekarev many. And the Eibishter soll helfen. We should be zoiche Avodas Hashem zu agul okrevo b'imperu b'yomeinu.
Being one of the Rosh Yeshivah here in Toronto, we went, a few of the Anhola members together, to invite another one of the Rosh Yeshivahs, Chaim Mendel Bratsky Shlita, to come join us tonight. When we came to him and we asked him this request, he right away excitedly said, for sure he would want to join, for sure I'm going to come. He shared with us his deep connection already from his father-in-law. He told us that his father grew up in the city of Greivne. His father was the only one which had a Tanya in the house. Anyone in the city, the Rav needed to check a Tanya, they would come to his father's house to find the Tanya. He shared with us that he heard from his Shver, Rav Nachum Partzovich, Rosh Yeshivah of Mir, that shared with him various things which the Rebbe told him in a Yechidus, that he was by the Rebbe, and how much he desired to Takabi Mamala, the heroes, instructions that Rebbe gave him during that Yechidus. He was meant to come. Fortunately, he called us a couple of days ago that he wasn't feeling exactly up to it. He won't be able to make it. He apologized and asked that we should give over his absolute brachas, both to the mishpacha, obviously, to the entire yeshiva, his most heartfelt wishes, and his greatest level of warmth and respect, and that he wished he would have been able to be here, but unfortunately wasn't able to come. I had the schus this year to have a special shutfus with Rabbi Wagner. Rabbi Wagner was already out of town from the middle of last year, Tevis time. when this year was starting, we were unsure exactly how to structure the yeshiva. Rabbi Wagner's our Rosh Yeshivah, he's remote. And I had the zchus to have with him a shutfus while he was out of town. I was here in town, and while he was giving the shiurim over Zoom, I was here in person making sure that the Marmakaimis, the sugya was able to be discussed face to face with the Bachrim, and then the Rosh Yeshivah was able to come on Zoom. The experience was something unreal. There were many, many days which when he would message me in the morning with Marmakaimis, and I would ask him, will we have a shiur today, Rosh Yeshivah? He would say, I'm going to have to see what I'm feeling like. And until 20 minutes before the shiur, we wouldn't know. Only later on did I hear from the family that those days meant days as I nishke kent a rezog and avart f'mayil the whole day. The family didn't hear from him a word. And mitamol, it came the time for the shiur. We would see, sometimes it was in the dining room, sometimes it was sitting on his bed, usually sitting on a couch. And mitamol, the shiur is a reis f'mayil. A different battery pack came into his body. When it's gekommen the Zeit to give a shiur, the Mesiras Nefesh that he had this year was something unreal. We had shiurim from the hospital waiting room. We had times we were able to hear in the background the beeps from patients nearby. We even had some shiurim which in the middle, the nurses were coming over to say, please quiet down, and he complained to us why the people in the hospital don't want to hear the shiur. There were times that we got the shiur from the taxi drive to the hospital, the way back from the hospital. His Mesiras Nefesh, as a Rosh Yeshivah, someone's learning, to learn. It wasn't just simple shiurim. We're talking about shiurim mamish, the tifsta shiurim, maisif, taisefas ala ikir from previous years, all in this difficult time with Metek Mesiras Nefesh. We have the zchus to have with us in yeshiva, I think it could say, a Talmud of the Rosh Yeshivah, a brother-in-law of the Rosh Yeshivah, Eichet Malabim Metek Mesiras Nefesh, and continuing to give to the Bachrim at least somewhat of a similar experience, both Mesiras Nefesh and Zaylenin, both in Mesiras Nefesh, every little shishi, like Rabbi Wagner would do, sit with the Bachrim, either learning or bringing till 2, 3 o'clock, midday little shishi b'shishi. We'll hear now a few words from Rabbi Wagner's brother-in-law, Aram, with us in Yeshiva, Harav Shmaryo Lobkovsky.
We're here to V'achayit in a Libay, to take to our heart a little bit from Rabbi Akiva. So the klal steht in Chazal, Dvarim hayesim in alev, nechnasim al alev. Speak a little bit, not from my lev, a little bit about the lev of the Rosh Yeshivah, from Rabbi Akiva, and hopefully these words will go into the lev of Tivas Herren. Chumash we learned just today, Bavus the Maisa, people came to Moshe Rabbeinu complaining, Anachnu tmeim lenefesh adam ulamani gara. Moshe Rabbeinu got a response from the Eibishter, Ish ki yiyeh tamei lenefesh b'derech rechoika v'asa pesach l'Hashem. Even somebody who is tamei or derech rechoika is able to bring a carbon, is able to get close to the Eibishter. And the Bavus Davart from the Rebbe Rayatz, that the message we learn from this is Nishtakim farfalin. There's nobody that's too far, there's nobody that's too tamei, there's nobody that's not worthy of getting close to the Eibishter. If you could say in a certain way, this was the life of Rabbi Akiva, that there was, in his life was always, he saw this as a message. There's nobody, there's no situation, there's no place, there's no time. There's never a matzav where somebody, anybody specifically, or as a whole, not able to get close, to be neskarif, to be a carbon, to be nesala, to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. First, as a Rosh Yeshivah, everybody knows that Rosh Yeshivah is, every Rosh Yeshivah makes sure that his yeshiva has the best bachrim, the best talmidim, and their boichin, to make sure that their yeshiva is on the highest level. I often heard from Rosh Yeshivah meetings that his shitta was different. He felt that every yeshiva, he felt that not just about himself, he felt that every yeshiva should have an amount of bachrim that are beferish not on the level of the yeshiva, and that the yeshiva's job is not just to teach people on his level, on the yeshiva's level. The yeshiva's job is to invite everybody, invite in others from outside. He even said that every yeshiva, he believes, should have a 10% of their talmidim that are not lefi the ruach and lefi the level of the yeshiva, because he felt that there's no reason why anybody should be out of yeshiva. There's no reason there should be a yeshiva that doesn't have place for anybody to enter and come in. It says when you get to Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva was the one that said petirah, and that you have to love every yid. And the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that when there's a machlekes when you get to Deir HaMidbar, where Yeshlam Chelek Olam Haba and Eilam Chelek, Rabbi Akiva was the opinion that Deir HaMidbar Eilam Chelek. So the Gemara says Shavkar Rabbi Akiva LaChasidusei. This is not Midas Rabbi Akiva. Midas Rabbi Akiva is L'Zakis Israel. Midas Rabbi Akiva is to see the positive in every yid, to be mezakeh, to see the schus, to see the maila in every single yid. So within the yeshiva itself, he always had this nekuda that there was no bacher that he felt that he wasn't able to speak to, that he wasn't able to lift up, he wasn't able to be mekar of him and say a word of ufei bin. Personal story on my own. When I was a young bacher, 13-year-old bacher, I was coming out of Shalaf, Yeshiva Ktana, and I was excited to go to a summer program in Montreal. It's a camp, Gan Yisrael, which is a summer program, L'chal Davar, and they had a little small division called Masmidim. What's Masmidim? An extra hour a day, besides for the hour or two of learning classes, one extra hour a day that they also learn a little more Torah, so they can call themselves Masmidim. And it's a camp for everything. So I was excited to go to that place, to go to camp. And I remember one Motzei Shabbos, I was sitting with Rabbi Akiva, Shvager, sitting around, Malav Malka. And with his love, he knew how to give the message across. The Mr. Bacher, you're a Tamim, you're Yeshiva Bacher, why are you going to camp? That's not where you belong. It's not your level. Going to camp and you're going to call yourself a masmid because you're going to learn another few minutes of Gemara. I remember it touched me very much. I started crying. And it had a very strong effect on me and a very impact. And then a few weeks later, he picked me up. He brought me from New York. He brought me to Blue Mountain, which was when you should wear Toronto. I had Yeshiva Skies then. And he enrolled me into the Mesifta. He enrolled me into a regular yeshiva. As his yeshiva, Yeshiva's Kais, was a real yeshiva, l'chol davar, for the summer. This was his b'chlal, shita, b'chlal. Oh, you always have the matziv. We have some bachrim sometimes. The bachrim are not exactly acting the fear, ruach of yeshiva, the ruach of a tamim, the ruach of a bacher. And he never felt that this was a time when you can't bring with them, uplift them. Whether if they're tamei or b'derech chayka, whether they're too far or they're too magushim to understand. There was never a matziv when he saw somebody and he said, this person is not able, this bacher is not, he doesn't understand, he's not lefi the ruach, he doesn't belong here. He always had words of encouragement, l'zakis Yisrael, it's ufei in a lichtige weg. And obviously this was always in a way of avos v'hafta l'recha kameich, in a way of lipshaft. It was never about putting him down, it was never about musar, it was always about the reichkeit and Tamaru Ketev Hashem, the geschmack of being a bacher, and being a chassid, and being on the level that Yeshiva wants, that Rebbe wants. Once the mashgiach of Yeshiva once complained to him, had a question in his mouth, what should he do? Bachrim are sleeping in, missing their Seder Chassidus, come over. But also missing Shachris, coming late. And it was an ongoing thing. His shaila was how to respond. Should I respond with a knas? Should I respond with other consequences? And Rabbi Akiva's response was, what's the shaila? It's already answered in Tanya and Perek Lev. Alter Rebbe already answers in Perek Lev. Tzarech lamashchan b'chavli aveisus ava. You have to schlep them with love, with care, dedication. That was always his kav and his derech of connecting and his way of being mashpia. And also in his private home, he didn't have a private home. His house was never private. His house was always open. Was never somebody who was b'derech, who came from far, from Eretz Yisrael, Meshulach, or people who didn't have homes. His house was mamish always open. There was no such thing as somebody was balanknish darten who didn't feel comfortable there. And Bachrim Bechlal, Bachrim had even a stronger kesher. Felt it's not his home, it's their home. Mamish felt as Madarif Yedin Einer, Manufabin, in whatever way it is, Bachrim able to feel that this is their private home. And maybe they can, come when they want and how they want, be mispasha there, and also let them and isolating their problems. He always found a way to bring them up and to makad of them. So I think v'chayit and aliboy, we could all learn from this. Whether we're talking about a magid shir in yeshiva, or a teacher in cheder, or a parent, when you see somebody of us, you have this approach that maybe he's tameim, he's b'derech chaika, he's not on the level, he's not on the path, he's not worthy, he's not able, he's not capable, he's not on that level, maybe he belongs to be somewhere else. And Madarif Alamal, we always have to have place in our heart and a place in our connection to be makad of them, to bring them up. That everybody is able to bring a carbon, to be neskarev, miloshin kiruv, le'alis, to bring them up to the Eibishter. Now, ending with the bracha that we should take b'zeicha, kids varam sheikh and yafar. We should be zeichet, hu b'seicham, karim mamish.
As Reb Shmario was talking, Mamish reminded me, also the age 13 exactly, Yitzchak will for sure remember, and the rest of the family might as well remember. After 8th grade, also as a 13-year-old, my plans were to go to camp. I don't remember if it was a phone call or in yeshiva or in school. Yitzchak came to me and said, do you want to join me? We're going to go to yeshiva, we're going to join the yeshiva in Postville. And I have to be, I don't know if I've ever expressed this to Yitzchak or to Rabbi Wagner, that I, in reflection, I only thought about this in the last few weeks. That summer, we mamish spent 7 hours a day learning, all the fabrengings with the yeshiva, and that gave me the schos that also throughout my 3 years in Mesivta, whenever Rabbi Wagner would see me in the hallway, he would say, "Nu, was the chabach of us land? Nu, was halst du? Where are you holding?" And no question, like Reb Shmayo was saying, those subtle comments. If it was on the way to get a drink, if it was filling up a coffee, or anywhere else, in the middle of a fabrengen downstairs with Remendel Aronov, those Shabbos long fabrengens, those short comments for sure put me into a certain place. Du bist doch a Woche was kocht lernen. Du bist a Woche was lernt. As Reb Shmayo was saying, Rabbi Wagner's house was always open. Mazare b'chayim afu b'chayim. I think the Bochum in yeshiva got it's in the walls of the yeshiva as the Bochum Vesen, that the one which runs the yeshiva, his house is open no matter what time of the day and no matter what time of the night. Bochum needed to fabring, Bochum have a question, they knew. You come to Rabbi Wagner's house. 2 nights ago, the Bochum were in such a feeling, and Baruch Hashem, we have a matzav, Mazara b'chayim afu b'chayim. They took a bus up north, came to the Benal's house, knocked on his door at 11:45 p.m. He opened the door and they fabrenged until Leira Baker. I would like now to ask the Menal von unser Yeshiva yet, which Rabbi Wagner appointed when he had to leave in the middle of last year, Harav Arya Leib Zeitlin, to share with us a few words.
Yonasan tells David HaMelech, V'nifkadeta ki yipaked moishavecha, you will be remembered because your seed is empty. In yeshiva we feel this day in, day out, hour by hour. The missing presence of Rabbi Wagner is something that we're experiencing in every decision, in every moment, in every seder, in every program. Whereas Ba'avar, of course, Rabbi Wagner was the one that was directing, was manhig, was deciding, was being madrich. And that's our commitment going forward, to, whenever a decision has to be made, to go back to those policies, those principles, the derech that he has put into the walls of yeshiva, his way of how the yeshiva should go, how to be madrich habacher, how the storm should be arranged. We'll forever go back to them and use that as the yisoid going forward. The Gemara in Yerushalmi says that Divreim Heim Zichroinam, the way to make a zikaron to Ibizog and Avart. Rabbi Wagner's Verbringens are Shem Dover, Techazer Avart, that I believe from one of his powerful Verbringens. He would sing a certain niggin. Everyone knows the niggin. Essen Nezach, Shlofin Shlofzach, was Omenton, Nasis Davin sich nicht. A writer would explain this niggin, and in line with the Nakuda that Mandy mentioned earlier, Chassidus has the Pisgam, the line of Elikus b'pshitus ve'elamais b'yischatshus. The real way it's supposed to be, and this is how Neshama sees it, Elikus is the pshitus, and Welt is b'yischatshus. The Chassid expresses in this niggin, why is it? Essen, Essach, Shlofin, Shlofzach, comes b'derech memele. Essen, trinken, Shlofin, this is a given, it's pepshitus. Davening, it's daven sich nicht. It's not coming naturally. You have to explain it to yourself, you have to elevate yourself, you have to push yourself. The way it should really be is alakus b'pshitus, the davening, the learning. This should be simple, easy. Essen, trinken, schlafen, guck rein in Shulchan Aruch. If it's allowed, it's allowed. If it's nicht allowed, it's. So we should by verbringen that this niggin used to be sung with words from the Lechadoidi. Mikdash melech ir melucha, kumi tzii mitoicha afeicha, rav loch sheves be'emek habocha, v'uyachmal alayich emla. And he types it like this. The Yid is a Mikdash melech. Every Yid is a Mikdash for the Eibush there, like the Shalom writes, Vasuli Mikdash v'shechanti b'seicha, b'seicha le'inamer ela b'seicha lechad v'echad. The Yid is a Mikdash. The problem is that we are in a hafeicha, a kernish, oilam hafuch reisi. Instead of elokus b'pshitus, ve'elam es b'yischatshus, that Torah, mitzvah, Rambam, a mitzvah, that should be our natural go-to thing. And Welt, meichitese. But the problem is, we're living in a hafeicha, and it's not always like that. Zokmen kumi shteyuv tzii ge'arois mitoicha hafeicha. Rav loch sheves be'imek habocha. We're sitting too long in the depth of the bocha of Loshen Nevuchim, the Fablonjivkai, we're lost in the Siba Kernish. If we do the effort to uplift ourselves, to relate to the reality, and we know Rabbi Wagner put in that effort, and like he said, Pasach Elio, he opened up and saw that Elikus is b'pshitus, v'elam is b'yischatshus. If we put in the effort, v'uyachmu alayich emla. So I believe, as we've been with him many, many times, and we're saying this niggin, if you could please not be shy and sing with me the niggin, the way we would sing it by many, many fabringins. Mikdash melech ir melucha, ku מתוך הפך רב לך שבס מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה קום יצאי מתוך הפך רב לך שבס בימי קבח והוא יחמל עלייכם לא יסנזק I believe that true Hitzen Alibri, this message that if I bring too many times to count, and it was he said it once and he said it again. If it was emes yesterday, it's emes today. This is the message that he shared so many times. V'achayit in Alibri to do our effort. We should be makayim tzi'im mitoich ha'afecha and live with the lakus b'pshitus v'olam et b'tzchachus. Koyach.
Already said, we grew up together, joined our class in Pre-1A, the same year the yeshiva started, Tafshin Zayin. I'm indebted to you personally, but more importantly, Dubas the Bechor. We'll now hear from Bnei Bechayre of Rosh Yeshivah, Ważgner, Shliach of the Rebbe in California, to share with us a few words.
This week's parsha starts off with the tzivay the Eibishter vayidaber havaya al Moshe lemer daber al Aaron v'amarta elov ba'aloisches haneres. This tzivay of the Eibishter to Moshe Rabbeinu to tell Aaron to light the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash is a similar to a tzivay in Parshas Tetzaveh where we have Yikho Elech Hashem and Zayizach. That over there the tzivay was mostly to Moshe and to Bnei Yisrael. However, over here the tzivay was to Moshe and to Aaron that Aaron should light the menorah. Hagam that a menorah, as we know, is anyone can light the menorah. A zar can light is kashal adlaka. However, the tzivay over here, the ba'aloisches haneres, was directed from the Eibishter directly to Aaron HaKohen. The Zohar brings down that Moshe Rabbeinu was the Shushvina de Malka, and Aaron was the Shushvina de Matronisa. That Moshe and Aaron were the Shushvinin of the Rebbeinu Shalom of the Eibishter and Knesset Yisrael. And the derech was that Moshe Rabbeinu was the Shushvin of the Eibishter through giving Torah, through bringing down Torah into this world, and teaching the Bnei Yisrael Torah in the way it was giving down from the Eibishter. And Aaron HaKohen, as we know, Aaron Oyev Shalom V'Reidav Shalom, his job was to prepare the Bnei Yisrael and to make them a keli, to make them prepared to be able to receive the Torah and the Shefa that came through Moshe. As the pasuk, as Rashi explains on the pasuk, ba'aloisches haneres ba'haloischa, that he should light the menorah and wait ad shetehei shalaves me'eleh. That was Aaron's way, and that was Aaron's way of lighting the menorah. If I may, my father's derech and chinuch throughout, as we heard many times from over the last while especially, as well as tonight, was he had, on the one hand, he was the Rosh Yeshivah of the yeshiva, and he farbranged, and he gave, and he taught Torah, and he gave, as Levi mentioned, deep shiurim in Nigla, in Chassidus. And yet at the same time, when a bacher came to talk to him and a bacher wanted guidance, it didn't matter his level, it didn't matter where he was holding. He knew how to talk to each bacher on their level, what they needed. I can't imagine that 15-year-old that would have come saying that they wanted to go to camp. They would have been told to go to Yeshivas Kayetz. I'm sure there were many that he would have been okay with going to camp. But obviously he was able to come down to the level of each one and be able to hear each one on their level. And give each one what they needed in order to grow, in order to be able to become the Shalheves Ha'ila Me'elah, and to be able to grow on their own level. And this not only was in yeshiva, but it was as well with his children. He made sure to always give us the guidance, encourage us to grow, encourage us to do the things that we needed to do. But at the same time, his derech was always, you have to grow on your own. When Bachrim came, I've heard this a number of times over Shiva, when Bachrim came sometimes saying that they were in Toronto, they were learning in yeshiva, and they were, some of them even, they're heben Bachrim can't learn, and he possibly felt that, they could have understood his shir, and yet when they came saying they wanted to move on to a different yeshiva, he never pushed or encouraged the bacher should stay. He always felt and believed a bacher has to grow. I can be there and give him the tools. As a bacher told me when he was in yeshiva, he liked to learn. He liked a lot. He liked Nigla. He had a strong kach in Nigla. But at some point he felt he wanted to move to another yeshiva. And he came to my father asking, would it be okay if he went to another yeshiva? And he said my father felt that, he told him, on the one hand, Toronto had a better Nigla program, so to say. But if that's what you wanted, and if that's what you got from others, he told him to ask others as well. He told him to ask other that have gone to that other yeshiva, see what they thought. And he gave him his brachas, and the bacher went, and he said he picked up the phone to him about a month into yeshiva. And he realized that he was missing this yeshiva that he went to. He was missing the shir in Gemara. He was missing the shir in Nigla. So he built the courage. It was a few weeks in to pick up the phone. And my father answered in the office. He answered his phone call or his cell phone, however he called him. And he told him. And he says, I was very nervous because I could have gotten this. I told you so. He was encouraged. You're going to be missing it. And he asked him, he said, but he told him what he was struggling with. He says, in Chassidus, I get a lot here, but I don't get much in terms of Nigla here. So he suggested a sefer to buy on the Masechta so he can have a little bit of a kach. He said he bought it right away and brought it. And then he asked him what he was learning, what the sugya in yeshiva was. And he said he sat for a half hour on the phone with him, giving him a shir. He said that gave him chayas for a long time, together with the sefer as well as the shir. This was his derech in all areas of chinuch. To make sure that on the one hand to give and to be mashpia and to give nigla, to give chassidus, to farbrengens, and at the same time to allow the shalheves, allow the person, allow the bacher, or whoever it was, the child that came over to him after a farbrengen to ask him a question in Chumash, to allow him to ask the question, to allow him to hear, to wait for him to finish to ask the question, and to answer his question and be there for him. And I give a bracha. I ask that to all of us, in our own lives, we all have areas of chinuch, We all have areas where we need to be mechanech, whether it's ourselves, our children, our talmidim, the tzavas of the yeshiva. That we have the koyach to be able to be mashpia on others and teach others and give others, and at the same time to be able to allow and to be able to watch and give this koyches and give the strength and give the tools to be able to grow on one's own. And I ask on behalf of all of us that my father should be a Meilitz Yosher, for my mother, so sie sein gesund, my grandmother, my siblings, my grandparents, and so beten that we should be zeicha, take it from Yad Mamish to the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. Kitzu v'ranu sheich ne'ofer v'u b'seichel.
We're going to have now a special video. Before we see the video, I want to give a Yashar Koyach to Talmud of Rabbi Wagner. Rabbi Wagner loved him so much, he brought him back here for a year. Mashgiach, Tachas Siloi. And he spent numerous hours over the last 2 weeks collecting the information, arranging the video, finding someone to put it together, first, second, third draft. And we're now going to have, just give us a second, and the video will be played.
One of the most geschmacke times that I spent with Rabbi Wagner was the summer that we were in Budapest, Hungary together. I was the learning director of the Yeshivah's Kayitz. Rabbi Wagner brought the Zal to Budapest, Hungary for that summer. As the learning director, I asked Rosh Yeshivah if he can give a shiur once a week to the younger Bochrim. Now, he gave the shiur and was always deep populim in the Gemara that they were learning. And I was very aware that the Bochrim really didn't understand what he was saying. So I asked him, Rabbi Wagner, you come in every week, you're giving this shiur, you know that they don't understand, so why are you giving it on such a level? And he said that I'm not their daily teacher. I'm coming in once a week. And I come in with one goal in mind. And that goal is, as the Talmidim soll wissen, as a Sfaran Hecher, Esferan Tifer. That the Talmidim that are learning, they think they understand the Gemara at 15. They should walk out of my shiur, I knowingly know that they don't understand, but that they should understand after the shiur that they're so much higher that they can reach and so much deeper that they can get into the Gemara. When I reflect on this story, I feel that really this is the entire essence of his Avodas HaKodesh. Rabbi Wagner pushed himself to set an example that we should all see as a Sfaran Hecher, that we should all see that there's a better, deeper, higher darga that we can reach. You watched him daven, you got inspired. You watched him learn, you got inspired. You watched him interact, you got inspired. He pushed himself above and beyond the average, and even above average, avoida, so that we, all his Talmidim, should know as a Sfaran Hecher and a Sfaran Tifer. And for that, we have to thank him, Me'oimek HaNefesh.
Every person has to say, Masai Yagim, Maisai, Maisai, Aveisai, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. That there's no person who could think, oh, you have me like that. I'm too small for this, I'm too simple, I'm too young, I'm too unimportant, and no such a thing. Every person is capable of achieving the greatest things. Every person is capable of reaching the highest levels.
I really experienced a love and a life of petirah like I never saw anywhere else. Kol Atzmaisei Temarna is a real thing. That literally be entirely invested with your whole, every limb of your body. The way Wagner ran around Zal and used his hands to teach us sugya. The way when he said a vart, it was mechadish something and his hands were flying, you felt like you were going somewhere. Shir wasn't just a nice vart. It was a full experience. And Wagner his investment was, he was fully there. Kol kulay.
Being mizbeinen was because the idea of Alikud is a nikud that's foreign to us. It's far from us. It's aloof from us, and we have to think about it and focus on it, and be mizbeinen and contemplate it in order for it to become closer to us, to make more sense to us, to become palatable, to spread out throughout us.
He'll come into shir, and the whole entire shir was dancing. It was dynamic. It was the shir was alive. It wasn't just a kasha tirits. The shir, the kashas were kashas, and the yisaidis, the chakidis were chakidis. And sometimes this will go on for one shir, two shir, 3, 4 shir that it was koching. I like to say that every time we walked out of a shir from our Wagner, our drawers were dropped. It was just incredible. You felt like you were by a magician that was standing in front of you and performing an incredible act, an incredible show. The way he had his depth and the way he was kol kuli svaris and kol kuli goyin. There was never a two-way chakira. Every chakira had 3 ways. There was always more than one way of looking at things. There was always more than 2 ways of looking at things. And by this he brought clarity, and this he brought a geschmack to everything that was in front of him. When I was in Sherbei Zal, we decided that we were going to start to print our Wagner Shurim on a mass scale. So we started working on a Shurim, we started editing it, and try to make it, that it should be able to be printed in the Sefer. And Rabbi Wagner really, really encouraged us to do it. He was really, really for it. I remember having a conversation with him more recently about it. And I remember he was saying that no matter what work we did to it, it still needs more work. What he told us was that the reason why he pushed us so much to do it was push a beat to give a bacher a kachel l'atera. Even though that was something that Lav Dafka was even really tfus yet. But a beat to give a bacher a kachel l'atera, he encouraged us to do it. He sat with us nights. I can say my Brickman could say that there was times that we were working on it, and we would email him back and forth. Sometimes it would be at one night. It could be that we sent him an email at 8 p.m. We got an answer at 10 p.m. Then we sent back a response at 11 p.m. Then we get no 3 responses, one from 1 a.m., 3 a.m., and 4 a.m. The whole night he was busy on this the share on producing it. His whole entire koch was that there should be a koch l'atera, a bacher should have a koch l'atera.
The shiurim really stuck out in I would say Ari Shag Mila Yira. When Ragnar gave a shir, it was called Atzmaisei Temarna. Literally his entire being was invested in the shir. He was walking, pacing up and down. His voice was not monotone. It was very, very live, very vibrant. And when he got to his vart, when time for the Chiddush, he screamed across Zal. There's a Reb Chaim, there's a Beis Halevi. It wasn't, it felt like the whole Zal was shaking. Shir was like an experience. You came into a shir, felt like he was taking you on a trip somewhere.
Rabbi Wagner bringing from my class about how all the big machers in 770 are making their donations and they're buying mitzvahs for the year, and Bachrim should be making hachlotas in learning Likutei Sichos. The resolution from the Farbrengen was that everyone should take a chelik of Likutei Sichos to learn and make a Seder Sichos after Seder every night. And Rabbi Wagner also made a hachlata, and he attended our Shir Beis Mesivta Seder Sichos at least for 4 or 5 months after that. I made a hachlata to learn chelik Aleph and Beis Likutei Sichos. A couple months later, I decided I could do Gimel and Dalet also for that year. From the next year, chelik Tezvav, and every year following that. 8 years later, it was in my Shana Rishona, I finished Likutei Sichos. I can trace it all the way back to this show of a Farbrengen that Rabbi Wagner put on for some young, impressionable Bachrim. This is the single biggest accomplishment of my life.
Reuven Chaim, you know what you are? You're the corner of Yerushalayim in everybody. Chaim Tzvi, you know what you are? You're the corner of Yerushalayim. Levi, I don't even know how to start talking to him about the percussion. But you're the corner of Yerushalayim in everybody. You know what it means? The corner of Yerushalayim. Stops by me.
Wagner uniquely sticks out that aside for his koch in learning, also he had a tremendous koch in davening. Sitting every day in front of Zal, davening for a very, very long Meshach Zman. Every day was different, but a uniquely long Meshach Zman, something which was very rare to find by Rosh Yeshivah, very, very uncommon. And especially Shabbos davening. Wagner would daven for hours, from when the minyan started till 2:30.
I remember I was in a yeshiva for one Yom Kippur, and I remember when we got to the song Ki Yanu Ha'amecha, and then we got to I remember Wagner was davening, clapping his hands and swaying back and forth on his talus. I remember that seer, that image, and until today I'm a shlichus here, and I talk about it every year. And till today, that niggin and that tefillah by me is something that is very, very meaningful, and I always try to daven with. And it made a very big impression on me.
I can still close my eyes, and I think about this often when I daven. Rabbi Wagner sitting there, covered in his talus, shuckling, swaying, back and forth, and you can see that here was somebody who the whole world didn't exist. Right now it was davening, it was that connection between him and the Eibishter, and that's it there was.
Rabbi Wagner's cure for the Bachrim.
Hello. I was not asked to speak, so I'm not gonna. But something short. You know, in the telephone when you want to say to somebody, to someone, you did good, you did like that. How do you call this? Thumbs up. Once, in a very, very difficult day for Rabbi Wagner, my brother-in-law, he had a very hard day, health-wise. Treatment, and he came home. It was very hard for him. And this was in the time that he was kochen sich in the Asher Yotzar, you remember? Everyone should be mechaven in Asher Yotzar, and he was sending WhatsApps about and emails to be mechaven in the Brocha Asher Yotzar. And punkt, in the same day I had a whatever, and I needed to go 13 times in one day and I made 13 asher yotzar in one day. And I sent them a WhatsApp, Rabbi Akiva, I want to be mevaser tov to you, that I made bekavod 13 times asher yotzar today. And you know what he sent me back while he's suffering and a very, very hard day? 13 times like that. He counted before he sent it. This was Rabbi Wagner. I will miss the times in the past year when I went to my Schwer and Schwieger's house many, many times, sometimes a few times a day, just to see him, to talk to him. If he needed any help, he had Baruch Hashem children and his wife around them, and they did everything for him. You can't see so many families, what they done for the father. And it's not easy many times, it was not easy. But I was there just to also receive, to take from him. But many times he was in the middle of davening, also in hard days, that was very difficult for him to talk. But he was sitting in the couch, in the family room, in the back, and I was coming to talk to him, and I realized he's davening, so I didn't bother him. I was just standing in the hallway for 20 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, listening to his davening. You don't hear today so many. And Bechlal, in his condition, he should daven not only word by word, but bitanign. And another thing that I can share with everyone, I said it by yeshiva to the children once, when I went together with his Rebbetzin to a doctor, and I don't remember which office was it, but he got a treatment, not a regular one, and I don't remember the name, it doesn't matter. And he prepared himself with a mimer in his tash. He should have something to learn, but he was very schwach and he couldn't really look inside and learn. And while I'm sitting with him in the room, I think this was a mimer in Likutei Torah, Oter Oer. So, you know, sometimes you have the sograim, a few lines with ayans and ayans and ayans, call me name, other maimorim or sforim. And he said, Kalman, please, if you can say it loud, then I will hear. And this was like bringing him to a comfortable matzav. And I was reading the first two, and another two, and a third, and I don't remember if about the third or about the fourth. In the middle of the mimer, I came to a sograim, and this was not a sograim that the Alter Rebbe is saying something, a subject. He's just sending you where to look, like an ayanim. So I skipped, and I didn't tell him, now I'm skipping a sograim. And after a few lines, he says, I'm sorry, Kalman, go back to the sograim. Don't skip the sograim. So we set Tehillim for him. We did so many things for him. I made a cheshbon that every day took me about 3 minutes, the Tehillim, that we, in the family, we shared the Tehillim every day. So my chelik was around between 2.5 and 3 minutes every day. So since he passed away, I decided not to give away this 3 minutes. And before davening, I don't want to say what I did before, because, but at least 3 minutes I'm giving is boinenus. So I have minimum of 3 minutes every day is boinenus before davening, and this makes me to daven much better the old davening, because if you are sitting 3 minutes before davening, beside the broches and mikveh before and tanya before, but just sitting and thinking about davening and about preparing yourself from davening. So I'm suggesting anyone that wants to follow the footsteps of Rabbi Akiva and to add to his life something from Rabbi Akiva's life, he can do anything just to take the minute, 2 or 3 a day that he did something for Rabbi Wagner, and to continue doing, and especially about davening and broches. Harav Dov Yehuda Wagner, a brother of Rabbi Akiva, so saying, Ogishet lange gute Jorn, Rabbi Dov Yehuda, please come share a few words. Huh?
My father, Olav Hashalom, used to send out letters to a wide distribution list with all kinds of long divrei Torah, thoughts, updates, and family things, and so on. And in a few of them, frequently, he would quote or stick in some material that Akiva had sent him. In one letter, he writes a story that Akiva had sent by a fax that day about a chassid who lived in Chicago, the early years of the Nesias, by the name of Rabbi Yankel Katz. He was a businessman. He was very connected. And he would often go to the Rebbe for yechidus, for advice, before doing any major step in his life, any major business deal, etc. He once came to the Rebbe and he said that some people had suggested to him a particular investment. He explained what it was about, why they thought it was a good idea, and the Rebbe advised him against it. As Akiva writes, Rabbi Yankel used to say, but I was very foolish, and I let my friends convince me. His friends were going on and on, explaining to him how it can't miss. So eventually he gave in, and he chose to go ahead with the investments. Of course, it went against him. And it wasn't working out quite the way he wanted. Until after a while, he was starting to be in a big tzara. So what does a chassid do when he's in trouble? He set up a yechidus with the Rebbe. He went into the yechidus room. And he's sitting there. But he's sitting quietly. How is he supposed to say that I went ahead and did what you told me not to do, and now I'm asking you for help? So he was sitting there quiet. The Rebbe looks at him and says, "No." So Rabbi Yankel says, "Rebbe, can I tell you a story?" The Rebbe said, "Yeah." So he tells the story like this. He says how in every town there were people with different professions, and there was one guy, his job, he was the local ganef. Every night he would go out, he would choose a victim, he would climb down the chimney, break into the house and clear out all the valuables. One night he chooses a house, he climbs down, he gets down into the fireplace and looks up. He chose by mistake the Rav's house, and the Rav is sitting right in front of the fireplace. He's in the middle of the night, he's sitting and learning. So the Rav looks at the guy looks at the Rav, and he's thinking quick, it's very embarrassing. So the guy turns to the Ganev turns to the Rav, he says, "Rebbe, ich gekommen fragen a Shaila." Rebbe, I came to ask you a Shaila. So the Rav smiles, he says, "Yeah, what?" He says, "Rebbe, wie kriegt man von da raus?" That was the story. Rabbi Yankel told, the Rebbe smiled, he gave him a bracha, he gave him advice. And Akiva concluded the facts, said, we should krichais from all the problems, from all the dvarim abevalbelim, from all the things that are in the way, both beruchnius and begashmius. Rebbe, wie kriegt man von da raus? This isn't a situation that we can see a way out of. At the Shiva, I was talking to one of my nephews, and he told me, he said, our father prepared us for this. Prepared us very well. Not prepared begashmius. Kiva's emunah and bitachon until the very last day was absolute and unshakable. There was no question, bitachon, gomer, the harder things became, the more bitachon he had. But he said, my father prepared us for this because all his life he prepared us for this. Gave us the strength in emunah and bitachon, gave us the strength in understanding the yesodis of what it means to be a yid, to be a chassid, to have strength of emotion, of emotional character, support and connection to each other, that we know we have what we need to be able to handle anything. And there is, in fact, no question that if there's one nechama we could have, it's looking at the strength that each and every one of his kids show. The knowledge of what they're about, of what they're here for, what they need to do. And I know, Banachai HaTalmidim, there's no question that Akiva gave that same attention and strength and direction, not only to his kids, but to each and every one that he interacted with. But Rebbe, wie kriegt man von da heraus? How do we get out of this? How do we continue from here? It was already mentioned, Kalman just mentioned about the focus, the kavanah on brachas. Remember just a couple of years ago, already when he was sick, my nephew, Shula's son, had a bar mitzvah. Kiva got up to speak despite not feeling so great. And he talked about the importance of what it means to say a bracha. How before you say the Eibishter's name, anytime you're about to say the Eibishter's name, there has to be a focus. You have to stop and think for a minute about what you're doing. Stop and think for a moment about what it means to be able to say Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, etc. There's so many practical examples of what it means to add in brachas, to add in kavanah and tefillah, to add in the kach and learning chassidus and learning nigla. Aber Rebbe, wie kriegt man von da heraus? In the war years, in the early years, the Frierdiker Rebbe moved to America. There was barely a minyan in 770. And there was an old Polish chassid who used to sometimes be called to help make a minyan, to help be the center. He would stay afterwards for a kiddush. So he would often lift his glass and say to the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rebbe Yeshias of Klal Yisrael. And the Frierdiker Rebbe would answer, Ein Yeshua, aber a rechte. There's no question, there's only one way we get mikricht areis von da, to strengthen what our understanding, our belief, our emunah and bitachon in what it means, atat kumt Mashiach, what it means to understand, to live with Mashiach, to understand what Mashiach means to a chassid, to understand how each time we learn a maimer, we're bringing a little bit more of that emes havaya leilam into the world, of that understanding of what a world looks like from a Mashiach lens. And that's the one way out. We should see take from Yad Mamish, Shekitzu V'ranenu, Sheichne Afar, V'ubeseicham, and we should be able to celebrate together emes efreiliche simches, especially for Israel.
A brother-in-law of Rabbi Wagner, a shaliach of the Rebbe in Buffalo, Harav HaChosid, Reb Lezer Lapkovsky, please come say a few words.
hour is getting late. I'll try to be mekatzer. The Gemara says, Shabbos Daf Pei Gimel, Adam kiyamus be'eyel. Everyone knows the famous Gemara, many sichos. Ein ateirim iskayemes al mishamei misatzmel. But there's a second day in the Gemara. And the Gemara says, Amar Rab Yenason L'Elam Ayimna Adams Atzim Beis HaMedrash U'Medivet Teira Afilum B'Shas Misa Shenemer Zeis HaTeira Adam Kiyamus Ba'el. It's something that Rabbi Akiva, we all saw. His love for Teira, his life was Teira. He was always involved his whole life. I remember, it's probably 2 years ago, he went to New York to get treatments, and he wasn't even able to go by car. And they were able to get him over to the American side, and that Salah had a plane, a jet, come to pick him up. I remember I joined him, who was on the American side, and we were waiting for the plane to come. He was so weak. The moment Hatzalah came, the first thing that they gave him was fluids. He was so weak. But what did he speak? He spoke Teira. That was his life. His whole life was giving Teira. But something special about him was the Rebbe Kachsach very strong that when he gives shiurim, to mention the sichos, to mention the Alter Rebbe, to mention Samach Tzedek, and he put a lot of emphasis on the Rebbe's sichos, that not just bring from all other Mekedas, but to bring the Rebbe's chidushim, what the Rebbe adds to it. And that's something he put a lot of emphasis, and a lot of probably the things of print. Remember, I don't know whatever happened to it. My brother Yossi was turning by mitzvah, must have been close to 30 years ago. And I prepared at the time the Rebbe's sichos on Sechs Kedushin, I think it was. And Rabbi Akiva went and wrote a whole, almost probably a sefer of artists on those sichos. Somehow it never came up bar mitzvah. I don't know whatever happened to it. But that's what he dedicated his life. But I wanted to speak about it besides that. So everyone knows that Rosh Yeshivah told a famous story. I forgot who it was with. There was a Rav in the city, and there was a Rosh Yeshivah in the city, and the Rosh Yeshivah went and wrote a sefer. And he went to the Rav for Haskama, and the Rav gave him Haskama. A while later, the Rav also wrote a sefer, and they came to the Rosh Yeshivah for Haskama, and the Rosh Yeshivah wouldn't give him. He says, well, I gave you Haskama, why won't you give me? He says, you're a Rosh Yeshivah, you have to write shiurim. What are you writing svarim for? There's more to it. Rosh Yeshivah has to give shiurim, but Rabbi Akiva gave his life to the yeshiva. Not only was it Rosh Yeshivah that gave shiurim, but the love, the dedication he had for the bachim, he had for everyone. He believed in you. He believed in every one of us. I heard a story that there was a sifa of Rosh Yeshivas, and the Rosh Yeshivas were complaining about how this day, as generations are getting further, that it's so difficult to work with the Bachim are on a different level, it's so hard. And Rabbi Akiva said, no, the other way. It's so much, we have so much more potential. There's so much more that the Bachim, because of everything there is, because of today's Bachim have so much more potential than they had before. He believed in every single one of you. He believed that everyone has so much good. I mean, I had some kids here in the yeshiva, and sometimes I felt he had to put some more pressure on them. He gave them off a little easy, but he said no. He believed in doing it in the easy way. He believed that Bachim, he'd give them opportunity. He'd give them the chance, they'll shine. And that's what I'd like to leave, is the love that he had for everyone, the ibigebkeit he had, and how he believed in every single Bacher, that every single Bacher could do the best, and he was able to bring it out in the Bachrim. He was able to find something that everyone liked, something that everybody felt good with, and use that as a way to get him involved in learning, to get involved in Psoim, to get involved in what was needed. He was able to find that, and that was so special about him. So difficult to... he not only learned... I remember when I had to do the first Hesped in Buffalo, and I wrote to him. I said, do me a favor. Give me some words. And he actually wrote me. I still use some of the kudus from what he wrote me then. It's hard to believe that years later I'll be standing here and speaking about Rabbi Akiva as in the past. But very soon, the coming of Mashiach, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach Reishenu, will see Akiva again, and they'll be able to learn with him, be able to get his hashpah.
Amen. Atomim Levi Wagner, Rabbi Wagner's son, will share what he has to say, please. Oh, please, stand on the chair. Very loud.
Is it tuck on it or?
Just a second.
כל השנה הלכת בכל יום מבטח לי שהוא בן עולם הבא. It was on a Monday morning that my older brother came upstairs and he woke up everyone, and they all went downstairs, and then my uncle came upstairs and he woke me up, and I went downstairs, and then he told me, do you remember your father was sick and he wasn't feeling well? And I said, yeah. So he said, he stopped for a little, and then he said I should just wash the water and I should go downstairs. I came downstairs and I saw everyone crying, so I thought just like something happened to my father. So whatever, and then my sister asked me if I know what happened, and I said no. So she told my older brother that I don't know what happened. So he told me that my father passed away, and then after he told me that people are bringing stuff and whatever, and then after that, most of the time, until like a long time, my brothers were mostly speaking about like what my father was doing before he passed away, like what he was saying and stuff. And he was saying a pasuk, Kol Hashem alachis b'chol yom muvtach loi shehu ben olam haba. And it means that someone that learns halachas every single day, he's gonna go for sure to olam haba. And when he was saying it, he was sleeping. So after that, they were speaking about stuff, and then after we went to the Levaya and everything that we were meant to do, and then like a few weeks later, first I was gonna speak by the Shloshim because I thought I was gonna speak by the beginning, when the day that my father passed away, and then after I had a dream about it, so I thought I'm probably gonna, and I asked my brothers and they said I could, so this is what happened.
Levi is a very, very professional musician also. If you need a good musician for a simcha, Levi is the man.
Okay, I think we're finished.
Finished? Thank you so much. Levi, you made your father proud tonight. Please, another clap for Levi. Lieberman. I can't say enough how much Yeshver loved you. We all know. Come share a few words about Yeshver, the Rosh Yeshivah, please.
Speak.
Shakayach, Levi. Shakayach. That was beautiful. What? Okay. It's very difficult to put into words all that I absorbed and witnessed for the past 8 years. Really, it started earlier as a bacher as well. And specifically 7 years ago, when my shver invited me to have the schus to join the anhala of the yeshiva, and thereby I had the schus to watch my shver day in and day out, and not just in the yeshiva, but at home as well. So it's going to be very difficult to be able to transmit the nishma in a way of re'iyah, just coming from Matan Torah, Rayim as nishma, that the Yidden were able to hear what usually is heard. And this is things that I saw. And to be able to transmit it in a way of re'iyah as well is going to be difficult. But to me, my shver was a walking, talking experience of Rayim as nishma. Through him, you were able to see and connect to the emes of Elikus that he was personally living with. Whenever you saw him, you connected to the truth of the Eibishter. So obviously, words won't suffice to achieve this, but I'm going to try to give over some words through which we could reflect and think about until it becomes by us a form of re'iyah that we could visualize, be inspired by, and upgrade our Avodas Hashem, a way of living. At the same time, it's necessary to bavarn that in the week of the petirah, I made a achlata to start reading an email every week at the Shabbos table. So like was mentioned, it's a living farbringen. And I looked at the email from Shabbos B'chukaisai, the week of the petirah, and I noticed that email of last year B'chukaisai, my shver wrote an email with regards to the petirah of Reb Mendel Plotkin It was right around the same time. My shver wrote that Achri Meis Kadeshim Emer, and some think that the pedestal gets put very high, and thereby they feel that it's unachievable, and that the person was a very big tzaddik, and they're not able to apply those things to themselves. The truth that I observed, one of the things that I saw strong and young, was the level of avodah that Rabbi Wagner put into working on himself. Pasha, to sharpen his ashkafa and perspective to live with the Eibishter on a real level. I witnessed many days before the machpa, all the years, how he had the full achrayas of the yeshiva, and it rested on his shoulders, and obviously running such a big responsibility brings with it a lot of stress, a lot of daiga, and you would see hours on end every single day, the amount of time and focus and kavod that he would put into the words of davening, that it should uplink the right perspective and the truth with amunah, bitachin, to continue and to have the right focus and the right direction, and pushing himself non-stop to dedicate himself to the bachrim. And the truth is that there was once by one of the meetings, there was a whole debate because the pace of the davening in the yeshiva would follow the Rosh Yeshiva's pace. And he took a very long time because he would focus and drill in every single word. And so some people felt that it's too long for the bachrim. What are they supposed to do? Not every bacher knows how to daven like that and be able to spend so much time on every word. But I guess now we know that the Rosh Yeshiva wouldn't give in. He felt that this is a yesod, this is a foundation of the whole Yiddishkeit, as it says in Ayem Yem, that the foundation is Avodas HaTfilah. And I guess now it could be etched into our minds and to the minds of every bacher that is supposed to see this, to picture the Avodas HaTfilah and try to emulate that. Another nekuda where you saw this emphasized, this nekuda of clarity, was in different times of tragedy. There were times that different tragedies that befell Klal Yisrael. There was recently, so right after the petirah, there was a whole message, email of Rabbi Wagner regarding Mumbai and the tragic terrorist attack that happened there. Then there was the email regarding the tragic passing of Hatam Nosson Deitch And there was recently messages the Bachrim were sharing that Rabbi Wagner shared with them after the tragic passing of Hatam Meir Lechavetsky recently. And on a personal level, right after my shver was diagnosed with the machla, we had a son, an Einikov, my shver, for which he was also the sandik. And unfortunately, he passed away. And all these situations, Rabbi Wagner shared divrei chizuk on a personal and a public level with tremendous sensitivity, but anchored in the emes. I'll share with you the message that he sent the family right after my son was nifter. I was 11:05 that morning, and I'm going to quote. We have to always remember that the Eibishter is our living Father. He loves ourselves, He loves our children, and with His infinite goodness and kindness. We don't always see it, and we don't always understand it. We can't expect to understand. We are tiny beings, and the wisdom of the Eibishter is unfathomable. But we know that whatever He does is His love and caring, and even if we're in the greatest pain, we acknowledge that and accept it as such. Now we have to for each other. And this nekuda was not just in this message, but this message was shared, like I said, by all the other tragedies. And to be anchored in that emes, to be able to have that clarity, this is the style of what it says in the Gemara about Rabbi Akiva after the Churban Beis HaMikdash. The Rabbi Akiva was able to be Menachem the Yidden, and I feel the same if we could say that with this sharp, crystal clear hashkafa that Rabbi Wagner worked on, he was able to be Menachem as well, Akiva Nechamtan. This image of Rabbi Wagner davening will be etched in my mind forever, being able every time now I just could close my eyes and picture him davening with kavana, every single word, drilling into himself. I recall even a time in the backyard minyanim that a few years ago, and I was watching other people watching, how the Rosh Yeshivah would daven was Pashat Atzir, that they rarely saw such a thing. The way he would say every single word and say Kaddish and everything was a tremendous tzir. I'm going to try to convey another few personal nekudas that I observed. Another nekuda that stands out was his ability to invest himself into another person's shoes and feel sensitivity for their struggle, for their suffering, for their simcha. So, on a personal level, when I entered the family, it was a little intimidating for me. It was a very big family, a big extended family. I came from a small-sized family, and it was a little tough. But he was very sensitive and very trying to do everything he could to make me comfortable, defending me, all different types of things to be able to get me as comfortable as possible. And the same I saw for many, for Bachrim that struggled as well. He had a very sensitive ear and being able to join in. I'll talk about more of that in a second. But also with regards to simchas, whenever we had a baby, he would send a full platter of chocolate. And when it came to the yeshiva, I remember one year, it could be did it more than 1 year, but I remember once that he made a personal letter with every name of every bacher. He wrote down the name of every bacher coming to yeshiva. He had a name with a letter placed on his bed with a welcome package to make him feel comfortable coming the first day to yeshiva, as well as there was a time that he asked that he had his wife bake cakes for every bacher's birthday. He had a whole list in the kitchen of all the birthdays of the bacher, and he would come every birthday and give a cake to every bacher, make them celebrate their Yom Haledes. And with regards to simchas in the extended family, he would drive in and go and travel to almost every simcha possible. He would, sometimes you're overwhelmed, there's a big extended family, how could you go to every simcha? He would try to make sure not to miss it, and at the same time, he wouldn't miss it. He would come right back and like machzach meshuga to be able to go, but be able to join in. And as well, in all the emails of his alumni, he followed up with what was going on with the simchas of every single Talmud, all the alumni throughout all the years, wishing them mazel tov. Then there was Bachrim, like we said, that struggled, and there was a Bacher. There was a time when people had pashat certain struggles, physical struggles. There was a Bacher who struggled with there was a Bacher with a certain machlan. Rabbi Wagner would spend every single morning waking up 5:30 in the morning because it was an Eretz Yisrael time, and he called to give chizuk. and he would send he sent Bachrim, groups of Bachrim to go there, and every time he sent the Bachrim, he sent chocolates as well, and he himself went to visit twice. And when Rav Shalom Mordechai Rabashkin was going through his ordeal, Rabbi Wagner, you could see in all the emails of Rabbi Wagner at that time, Rabbi Wagner, you could feel the tsar, and Rabbi Wagner would share Divrei Chizuk and Divrei Yisayirus about that, and share Shalom Mordechai's emails and daven. So this is another very strong nekuda, to be able to be sensitive to others and be able to feel what others are going through, and even give from yourself a bissel to help others. Another nekuda that I saw was the nekuda of dain every minor. Like you see the Shalish Alach, and like we said, it was mentioned already, his house was one that was dain every minor. It was open to all the Bachrim, open house for guests, open house for, there were nephews and nieces that would come stay there for a few years to Pashat learn in the Moistis over here, because they were on Shlichus, different places, they didn't have the Moistis. They would come and stay in the house and live there as one of the family, and they were part of the family. And there was a lot of other examples when it came to tzedakah. There was a bacher once that wasn't being accepted to yeshiva because of lack of funds, and Rabbi Wagner got on the phone to discuss with the Anhola of that yeshiva, and eventually he came to the maskana. He just went to the bank, took out $8,000 and paid for this bacher's tuition to be able to get him into the yeshiva. And this is something that you saw that even with Meshulachim as well. Dain every minor, every single Mashulach will get his time. Every single Mashulach, he would sit by the table, one after the other, one after the other. I remember whenever the door was open, the Mashulachim would come in, it would be a line of a whole bunch of them, and he would sit and talk with each one and make them feel comfortable. Another, just two quick nekudas, time is getting late, but another two quick nekudas was, you saw the tremendous kibbud aim that he had, that how much he would care and take care of his mother in a tremendous vakavadika manner, like dealing with royalty. He would spend time visiting. He would make sure to have the drinks and everything that was necessary over there. And especially, I remember during the machla, he was worried to share words of positivity as soon as he could, so to ease the anxiety or to give chizuk. And this he imparted in the education of the children as well. When they sat at the Shabbos table, with regards towards their mother, Zeishes Chayil, that if she would start cleaning up the table, he would right away get up and start cleaning the table, so that the children should start cleaning the table. And I say one last thing, and that is the way he would run the Shabbos table was Pasha make every single child feel very special with regards to the parsha and everything. He would announce them as a special speaker, guest speaker coming from Toronto. And he would ask the older children questions that would make them have to prepare before the meal, and he would ask them questions to make them seek answers after the meal, and all these things were. He had family shiurim by Pirkei Avos. There would be family shiurim during COVID. So these are a lot of things that we could take, and lessons we could learn in our own personal lives and our family lives, being there, being involved in the children, being involved in the mishpacha, and being involved in everything. And the last nekuda is that I was sitting Shabbos discussing the regrets, a few regrets that I had. My wife was saying as well. And then I opened up an email from Rabbi Wagner, and he was writing a whole email about regrets that he has at the end of the year of Bachrim, about how he could have treated this Bacher and said this to this Bacher, etc. And then he says, but the real regret is going to come very soon, because Mashiach's about to come, and then everyone's going to regret that you didn't contribute enough in your shlichus. So Mirta Hashem, we should be zeicha, and we should be able to contribute in our shlichus and bring Mashiach right away.
I want to ask, sorry for saying that, but the most smiley face of the Wagner's brother, Rabbi Avremi Wagner, please. He's always smiling. Everybody is happy there, but he is smiling also.
The Gemara in Bava Basra says, "V'samti chad kodshim sheisayich." Pligi batrea meiroi b'marova. V'kedamri trei malachi b'rakia. The Ben Yoyada asks, according to this girsa, why is it that we're saying that the Amoraim had the machlekes before the Malachim? And he says because it was the machlekes of the Amoraim that inspired the machlekes of the Malachim. So Vasap is da. This is not the only time in Shas that Yehuda and Chizkiah had a machlekes. Why is it over here that their machlekes inspired the Malachim? All the Mefarshim explain the machlekes. The machlekes is if the kadkaid that's going to be in the walls of Yerushalayim Lasid Lava is going to be the Shayam or the Yashveh. And the Mefarshim explain that each one is explaining Kefi Midasai. One represents the one is the Evan of Yosef, one is the Evan of Binyamin, representing Chesed and Gvura. And each one of the Malachim and also each one of the Bnei Reb Chia, they were saying the Evan that is their derech, either Chesed or Gvura. But the Nitei Eson has a different Mahalach. He says that the Medrash says that the Yidden were Nigaluf Mitzrayim because of four things. Shaleshinu es Shmam, Shaleshinu es L'Sheinam, that they were Gador from Arayis, and that there wasn't Deloteria Bahem. And he says that's really two categories. The first three are all staying separate from the Ummais, and the fourth is the Achdus between Klal Yisrael themselves. And he says that Yosef, the Shayam, Yosef was mitzdayin in the first three, Ani Yosef, Ki Pi HaMedaber Aleichem, and the Maisa V'Teish is Peitifar. And Binyamin was mitzdayin in the other. Binyamin was mitzdayin in Avos Yisrael. He named all of his sons after his brother. Now really, if you think about it, these midas that they were mitzdayin in stand in opposition to their etzem midas. Yosef's midah was chesed, and chesed we know could lead to a lack of being gador. And Farkert, it was his itztainus in that went against his midah. And the same thing with Binyamin, even the name of the Evan of Binyamin, Yashpeh, Yeshpeh, he could have said Deloteria, he could have been Ma'ir Dinim, and he wasn't. Maybe that's what was Ma'ir, the Shturim and Shamayim, was Ma'ir the Malachim to have a machlekes. When Yehuda and Chizkiah, the sons of Reb Chia, also went in this derech, and they darshaned, they went outside of themselves, they went outside of their comfort zone, outside of their etzem tchunas, and they darshaned the hitztainus in the opposite. That was Ma'ir the Shturim and Shamayim. We heard already many stories tonight of how Rabbi Akiva went outside of himself. He could have really, he had a Ga'inish cup, he could have just stayed with that, he could have been a Rosh Yeshivah, he could have been a Talmud Chacham Muflig. But he pushed himself in so many ways to go beyond, to do more, Sayin Avodas Hashem, and even in the learning itself, I don't know how many people know that he was ba'atzam very shy and introverted by nature. And it cost him to be outgoing and to put himself out there. So that's all fine and good to explain Ashturim and Shamayim. But how do we understand his atzlacha? We heard so many stories, especially throughout the Shiva and afterwards, of Bakrim who were not doing well and who he managed to get through to where nobody else could. And even Bakrim who, Rahman al-Islam, lost their shaykhs to Yiddishkeit, but their only remaining connection was that they would tune into Farbrengen, they would keep a shaykhs with him. Where did that come from? The Braisa in Avos Reb Nassan says, according to one Girsa, Al tischaber l'rasha v'afil l'karver l'Torah. And all the Mefarshim ask, how does that shtim with the memra of Eivis Abrius and Mekarven l'Torah? I think the answer is in the words themselves. Al tischaber l'rasha has a tough, it's lashon neichach. You should not be mischaber l'rasha. V'afilu l'karver l'Torah. If there's a you, not only are you not going to be matzliach with him, he's going to be mekalkel you. Aber oyeves abrius, ava, is iskarvus atzura is acher ritzayin cheshkei v'loi zulasai. If you put yourself aside, if there is no you, then umekarven LaTorah, then it's going to work. Ba'alois chashlach, you want to raise someone up? Throw aside your yeshus, throw aside your chitzonius, throw aside your zich, and then it's going to be shalheves eila me'eleh. There's no you mixed in. The shalheves, his neshama, is going to be meir. And that's what we saw so many times, so often with Rabbi Akiva. I know personally many times I asked him questions, and I could see that he was strenging sich to answer me not from his perspective, but from my perspective. I just want to share one more machshava from my father, Zechron Levracha. In the parsha it says, Miksha teyasa amenayra, sheyamesh rabbeinu miskasha, b'maisa amenayra. Chazal tell us that the miksha teyasa amenayra, it had to be all made from one piece of zav, and that's a remez for the achdus of Klal Yisrael. So what was Moshe having shver? Why was this more difficult for him than any of the other kelim? So my father said that there's a Yerushalmi, Amar Rabbi Akiva, v'ahavta l'reacha kamecha zeh klal gadol petirah, ben azay yomer, zeh sefer toldos ha'adam zeh klal gadol mizeh. A bigger klal gadol petirah is zeh sefer toldos ha'adam. That everybody comes from the same Adam Arishan. And my father explained, you'll forgive me, this is Kabbalah Isis, I don't really understand the next part. But in physics, the smallest particle of matter is the atom. Now the atom is really made up of other particles which are even smaller. However, they work together, and it takes tremendous force to split them apart. And once you split them apart, they don't really react in predictable ways. The way they act doesn't make sense. And therefore, the atom is the smallest. Can you say it again? I can't. But then there's quantum mechanics. Those smaller particles, when they're separated, and they can be very, very distant from each other, but when you make one of them change in a certain way, then all the other ones also react the same way, even though they're far away. Why? Because they all stam from the same source. And my father said, maybe these are the two mishalim of Rabbi Akiva and Ben Azai. Rabbi Akiva said, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamecha zeh klal gadol petirah." Kamecha, like the Yerushalmi explains over there, that if one hand cuts the other hand, a person doesn't take nekama from his right hand because he cut his left hand. That's the Rabbi Akiva, the v'ahavta l'reacha kamecha. That's the atom. It's taka, we're separate, but we work together and we're held together in one. We have unity of purpose. But Ben Azai says that there's more to it. That even when we're separated, because we all stam from the same makar, because Zeh Sefer told us Adam, we're still echad. And that's what happened. Moshe Rabbeinu was miskasha in the Maisa Menorah. He said, yes, I can make a menorah ad Yerecha ad Kana, from the Gadol to the Katan. I could make it all be one. And that's going to represent the Achdus of Klal Yisrael. But what happens if Chas v'Shalom a piece gets cut off? If a piece is separated from the rest? Where's the Achdus going to be then? Hat der Eibishter gesagt, Hashlich ba'esh v'nasis me'eleo, it's all going to be made from me, it's all going to come from me. And therefore, no matter what, no matter when, no matter where a person is, we're all from the same makar, and we're all echad. So even though there's now a separation between us and Rabbi Akiva, we know that our actions here affect him in the Olam HaEmes, and his tenuas in the Olam HaEmes affect us here. So our tefillah is that through trying to learn from his lessons, trying to take from his ashpa'is, and bring ourselves upward, the Eibishter soll schon sagen, lahevi kedeinu kedein, bila hamavis lanatzach amach Hashem alikim dem me'al kol payim.
Amen. Yasher koyach, Rabbi Avremi. Number one, the next few speakers, until the end, all of them together will not take more than 20 minutes. Mirz Hashem. We have the zchus to have with us today, from far, but very, very, very close, a close brother-in-law, Harav David Lapkovsky, the Shliach of the Rebbe in Oakland, California. Please come over and say a few words. While Rabbi Lapkovsky is on the way to the mic, I know many people are going home tonight with the machshove. I'm going to be a oived because so many speakers spoke about the Avodas Hashem. To make it easy, just buy the Shaila Moiro Siddur. Really. Not as a joke.
I'll be quick. I want to thank the distinguished Master of Ceremonies here. I think it's you beat the Guinness World of Records with Ashiyartas. You know, the Rambam says it's 10 times that a person should try to be Mekayim the mitzvah, but 13? It's a big achievement. The story is told about a bacher who was very close to the Rosh Yeshivah. They were very close, and one day the bacher takes off and he goes to Chassidische Yeshiva. In a different town. Comes Pesach time, and he comes back home, and he sees his Rosh Yeshiva, his older Rosh Yeshiva, walking down the street. So Rosh Yeshiva calls him over, and with tears in his eyes, he says, "What happened to you? Mit gekocht in lernen, mit machadish ven chidushim. What happened? Why did you leave? What happened?" So this bacher looks into his Rosh Yeshiva's eyes. He says, "What did I learn there? Why did I leave? Why did I go there? In the Chassidische Yeshiva, I learned to become a Yedei Machshavas. Ich bin a Yedei Machshavas." So Rosh Yeshiva says, "Du Yedei Machshavas? How do you become a Yedei Machshavas? Tell me, what am I thinking now?" So he looks at Rosh Yeshiva, he says, "You're thinking Avaya Echad. You're thinking about the Eibishter." The Rosh Yeshiva says, "Ligens, it's not true. I haven't thought about Avaya Echad in 10 years. So he said, "That's why I went to the Chassidische Yeshiva." There's a similar Nakuda with the Baditchever, they say a similar, what he told when he came back after he went to the Magid. Rabbi Akiva would always farbring that by Chassidim, when we say in Tehillim, Im Esak Shamayim Sham Ota Vatzia Sha'eli Neka, we say with excitement that Im Esak Shamayim Sham Ota, that the Eibishter, wherever you go, the Eibishter is there. He said in other places, when they say this kapitel in Tehillim, it's with Bidmois Shalish. Im Esak Shamayim, I want to run away from the Eibishter. I go on vacation. I go to a place where there's no Frumme Yidden. Gam Sham Yodcha Tanicheni. Ana Evrach Biponecha. Wherever I go, you're there. He says it with a sadness. Where can I go when the Eibishter is not there? I'm running away from him. Because sometimes when we get excited about our learning, when we get excited about the Gemara, they say about Ibn Nissen Emenov that he would start learning a Masechta, and when he would get to Daf Hey, he had such a geschmack, he said it's Tzufel Taivis, and he would close the Gemara and open a different Masechta. Because he felt sometimes you get verkocht so much in the Gemara and the Nigla that you feel like, you mamish, this is it. And you forget about the Neis Natera. You forget about, there's an Eibishter.
Even a Rosh Yeshivah can forget about this connection with the Eibishter. And that's something that was extremely unique by Rabbi Akiva, that the Eibishter lived within him. The Eibishter was part and parcel of his life every single day. Even when he was extremely sick, he would write these emails every once in a while about a Sudas Haidah. He just came back from the doctor. Things are great. And I would call Yitzchak and I'd say, what's going on? And he would say, I don't know what he's writing about. But he had such a connection. He felt things were different. The bitachon that he had, his connection that he had, everything was Eibishter. The Haidu Hashem, the Haidah that a Yid has to have every single day. That L'mayla yesh u'lamata ayin. The exact opposite of what we see. We think everything in this world is a yesh, and the Eibishter is ayin. But that know that Haidu Hashem, we're admitting to the Eibishter that it's not true. That the Eibishter is the real yesh. That a person has to be one with the Eibishter. That every single moment in your life you have to have that relationship, the V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha. That was something that we saw by Rabbi Akiva that I learned from every single day. I was from the first shir in his yeshiva, in the first year, from the earlier Talmidim. And I don't know what the Talmidim saw in the last 10 or 20 years, but he was a ball of fire. Every fabrein, every davening, every moment, the geschmack, and the way Yitzchak mentioned earlier about his hands-off approach that he had, he didn't sit on Bachrim's heads constantly. He didn't tell them you came 1 minute late or 5 minutes late. He showed them by example. He showed them what it means to be Tekochen Nigla, Tekochen Chassidus, what it means to be a Chassidish Yid, what it means L'shanis Teva Midaisav. He showed by example. He didn't have to tell you. He didn't have to go and scream it to you. He didn't have to call you out. It was a hands-off approach. He told you this is the way Yiddishkeit is. Willst? You're welcome. The willst nicht? Every once in a while I'll remind you. And that hands-off approach accomplished so much more than any other yeshiva, I think in Lubavitch especially, where sometimes the mashkiach or the menayel or the Rosh Yeshivah is demanding and demanding and demanding. He demanded, but his demanding was through his own Aveda. You know, it's the Shloshim. The Rambam says that we learned the Shloshim from Avachsa, Esavia Vesima, Yerach Yomim, and I'm sure we'll continue the Bechia until the Kitzav Rana Sheikh Neafer Vu B'Seichem.
Hayashikoyach Harav David, Atomim Dovi Wagner, please. Very special. And a Talmud in Yeshiva, present Talmud.
I was wondering a little bit why they asked me to speak. After sitting here for a few minutes, I think I figured it out. They needed to give people a little bit of time to ear out from, and they didn't want to offend anybody. So I'm a little young, I have nothing really to say, and I'm a little bit too big egoistic to get offended. My father used to say a story that in Italy it was right when the train started coming out. So Italy also built their own train, and everybody, the whole town, people from around, they all came to watch to see this wonder sight, and started making noise. There started being a lot of smoke. And the train didn't move. The train didn't go anywhere. So they realized, they did a little bit of looking into it, and they realized that they forgot to connect the locomotive, which I guess was the engine. They forgot to connect it to the other carts. And the lesson my father said was that it's important that every inspiration, it's important that you take something out of it to connect it to yourself. You have to make sure you connect the engine, the locomotive, to take it into something practical. So the inspiration is very simple, at least for me. I could talk for myself that it's time that we realize that that it's getting late. Too much worry, too much sadness, too much pain, and we have to bring Mashiach. So what lesson can we take from the inspiration from my father, the way he was? So you guys heard already a lot of speeches about there's so much, and so it's very hard to take one idea from all the speeches. It's hard to put it together. So I'm gonna try to help in my own from my own perspective. Everybody knows the story of Rabbi Akiva, that original one, that when before he was Am Haaretz, he didn't know how to learn, or he didn't learn, and one day he walked by, he saw water dripping on a rock, and he saw that it made a hole in the rock, so he's done Kavod LaTorah Reflection. He said if water which is soft can make a hole in a rock, so too petirah, which is hard, could for sure make a hole in my head. And it's a little difficult to understand. What was Rabbi Akiva? He became one of the biggest Tanaim. It's hard to imagine that it was a miracle which changed it around, that he was suddenly able to learn after trying hard. It only makes sense that he was able to learn before. So what changed? What did he see in the rock? What was he comparing his head to a rock that he needed to learn from the water, which is soft, could break through a rock, so too petirah could break his head. So the way I see it is that everybody knows that there's a question, or to explain what was this inspiration, was that we see that water, even when if it will go on an animal, let's say for example, it will drip. It could drip there for 1,000,000 years. It's not going to make a hole in an animal. So there's a hole in Rabbi Akiva's logic, seemingly, that water can't break everything. So maybe Rabbi Akiva is more like the animal. And the explanation is that no, the animal is the reason why it doesn't make a hole in the animal is because the animal, every time it will drop on the animal, it's going to shake it off. The animal is going to shake off the water. And a rock will never shake it off. So as long as Rabbi Akiva noticed from there that as long as you make yourself like a rock, as long as you let it go into you, then it's going to be able to make a hole. Seemingly, Rabbi Akiva, until then, he felt that he's going to be able to learn, he's going to become a big Talmid Chacham, it's not going to change him. Instead of being a genius he could be a professor in mathematics, and he could be a professor in petirah. It's not going to change him. And when he saw, and he was looking, I guess, for how he noticed that it could change him. He saw that the water falls on a rock. As long as he keeps himself like a rock, he doesn't move. He tries to be a rock. It says in Chassidus that a rock is daimim. It's from the lashon of duma, of quiet. As long as he's in a way, he acts in a way of bittul, quiet. He lets it go on him. Then it's going to make a change in him. It's going to affect him. similarly, so this is what I think is the point. I think the main point of where we can learn from my father is that similarly my father, I guess, saw this lesson is that we can learn from Rabbi Akiva that this idea of bittul, that you don't try to show your mitzvahs, you take a step back. The idea of bittul is not that you say that this is such a high level for me I can't reach it. You say it doesn't make a difference what this level is. This is what's wanted from me. This is what we have to do. And that's going to change the person ultimately. So the idea is just you take one little thing because that's what's wanted from you. You take that one little thing and you keep doing it. You keep putting yourself aside with that one little thing, and it will eventually, it could be a drop of water, it will change you. I'm just going to finish with another story. My father used to say that there was another Ganev that he was also looking to still, I guess it was the same Ganev as the story earlier, because he didn't go into the house, he stayed outside the house. He had bad luck going inside, so he stayed outside, and he was in the courtyard, and he saw two horses. He takes one horse and he leaves. He comes back to take the second one, and the second one, his bad luck again, the second one starts making noises, and the owner of the house comes out and he starts screaming at him. He says, "What are you doing here?" And the quick thinking again, and he right away he comes up with an idea. He says, "You don't understand what's going on here. I am your horse." The guy looks at him and says, "You're my horse?" He says, "Yes. Before I was a person just like you, and I had different sins. I did the wrong things, and my punishment was that I'm going to go into the body of a horse. And now I finished my time, and I'm back into a person." And the guy feels all bad. He takes him inside. He gives him to eat. He says, "All the times I whipped you, all the times I was bad to you." The guy says, "No, it's okay. It was my punishment." He says, "No." And they move on. The next day, the owner of the house needs to buy a second horse. He's missing a horse. So he goes into the marketplace, and there he sees this horse. He says, goes over to the horse. He says, "Petirah, petirah, nach ein Tag bist du geworden ein Mensch, bist du zurück geworden behema." After one day you were a person, and now you're back. You're back to your regular routine. And it's very simple. The idea is you have to keep doing it. You have to stay. You have to take this inspiration and keep it. It's not. You can't go back to being the same old horse.
Wow, Dovi. Now I understand what means Mazaroi B'chaim, Afu B'chaim. I think Machanaim is coming out after tonight with a book, Rabbi Akiva והגנבים. I think so. Atomim Yisrael Wagner. Siyum Maseches. Please.
I learned in the last 3 weeks, I learned with my uncle Noah, Maseches Marcus. It was decided that I would read the Siyum of the Masechta, and he would say the Hadran, only because if it was the other way around, he would read it, I would speak, we'd be here for another couple of hours. Rabbi Akiva was walking with a few of the other Tanam of that time. They were walking in the Harabayis, and it says, "Given shehigiu laHarabayis, ra'u shol sheyatzim beis kadshe hakadashim, ischilu hein boichen Rabbi Akiva mitzachik." They saw a fox go out of the kadshe hakadashim. They started to cry, and Rabbi Akiva started to laugh. Amar lo mipnei mat hamitzachik, amar lahem mipnei matam boichem. Amr Allah makom shekasav by vazara karav yumas v'achshav shualim halchu by v'lo nifka. אמר להן לקח אני מצחק, תכסב העידה לי עדם נאמנים מסוריה הכהן וזכריה בן יברכיהו וכימה עניין אוריה אצל זכריה, אוריה במקדש ראשון וזכריה במקדש שני, על התלה הכסף בנבואסה של זכריה בנבואסה של אוריה. ואוריה כסב לכם בגללכם ציון צדת תחרש, בזכריה כסב עוד יש וזקנים וזקנת ברחבת ירושלים, עד שלא נזכם בנבואסה של אוריה הייסי מסערה שלא נזכם בנבואסה של זכריה, אך שנזכם בנבואסה של אוריה בידוע שהנבואסה של זכריה מסקיימת. בלשון הזה אמרו לי, עקיבא נחמתנו, עקיבא נחמתנו. הלדן הלך אלוהי נלך, נסתכל למסכת מקס. You could speak while I say the words.
Rabbi Noam Wagner, a brother of Rabbi Wagner, Rosh Yeshivah of Temchet Mimim in South Africa, famous Mashpia in Lubavitch, will say the Divrei Chisum, the Siyum of tonight, and right after Rabbi Noam's drosha will be the highlight of the video. You saw a video before, will be another 6 minutes that was prepared especially for tonight about alumni of Rabbi Wagner prepared a very nice and regeshdik video. We're going to see it after Rabbi Noam's words, please.
By Chassidim, we don't say espedim. By Chassidim, we tell stories. And one of the reasons for this is because a hesped, or at least the types of espedim that people give nowadays, is telling about the greatness of the person. And by Chassid, every day he thinks about Gadlus Akel and Shiflus Adam. And so he knows that when you think about Gadlus Adam, then it brings Chas v'Shalom the opposite. And when someone's in Eilam Ha'emes, he knows that even more. So to talk about the Gadlus of a person is not something that a Chassid does because it's the opposite of everything that a Chassid stands for. But to tell stories means to tell a story of how this person reveals the Gadlus of the Eibishter in the world. That's something which Yichud Zelemailo Nitzchi Leilam Void, that's something that stays forever, and that's something that's always something which is necessary and always something which is there. And one of the things which we see this is in the Siyum Takov Masechta Makos, like Yisrael just read, the story of Rabbi Akiva and Chachamim. The Rebbe asks a lot of questions, but just in the point of what the Rebbe explains with regards to the story or the two stories. Rabbi Akiva was laughing and they were crying. They asked Rabbi Akiva, why are you laughing? What's the question, why are you laughing? They said to Rabbi Akiva, you also ripped your clothes. You also rent your garments when you saw the destroyed Beis HaMikdash. How come you're laughing suddenly now? Rabbi Akiva answered them, Mipnei matem boichim, and you also ripped your clothes earlier and saw the destroyed Beis HaMikdash. You didn't cry then, why are you crying now? And they answered Rabbi Akiva and they said, and the Rebbe explains it, but the point of it is that we saw the hafla. We saw ad kidei kach beforehand. We saw, yes, there is a world the Eibishter made. There is a time of a Beis HaMikdash. There's a time of Galus. There's a time of Churban. But ad kidei kach, to that extent, that the halalu kushim mistachavim latzabim, and here there's the koyla mula shel roimi, and anu beis adayim ragli elikeinu sarav ba'esh. Ad kidei kach, they said that there's a shul yetzim beis kodesh hakadashim. Oh, it feels like South Africa now. They said to that extent, ad kidei kach, we know that there's a churban, we know that there's a galus, but to what extent?
And Rabbi Akiva said to them, Lekach ani mitzachik, this is the reason why I'm laughing. When I see the afla in the most, the afla of the galus, in the greatness of how powerful and how terrible the galus is, and that is where I see the greatness of the gula in that itself. The Rebbe explains it, that Rabbi Akiva, it says when he was passing away, so it says that his Talmidim saw that the Romans were combing his skin with iron combs, and he was saying Krishma. And the Talmidim said, Rabbeinu, Ad Kan, how much can it be? And the Rebbe says, what do you mean? These are Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. These are Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, and the Rebbe says, no. They asked Rabbi Akiva, even in this you could see Achdus Hashem, and you could spread Achdus Hashem. And he said to them, yes, this was my whole life. This is what my whole life was about. And the point of perhaps something which we can see, the Meir Daik Bishma, a name means something. The name Akiva means Akev, the heels. Rabbi Akiva was in the Akev, he was in the generation right after the Churban Beis HaMikdash. The destruction was unbearable, and yet Rabbi Akiva was able not only to see Achdus Hashem, but to reveal it so that everyone should see it, to the extent of them saying, Akiva Nichamtanu, Akiva Nichamtanu. We have in our time also, we're in the Ikvisa the Meshicha. Akiva, the Ashgacha Al-Yena put him in a time, he started his career in Yeshiva, in Tafshin Nun Gimel Nun Dalet. I don't want to get into it. I remember that right after Gimel Tammuz, the day of Gimel Tammuz, that night, in making a farbrengen for his bachim in his house, in his basement. The Eibishter Ashgacha Al-Yena put him in a time where he, not only to be, but to teach and to guide a generation, first those who had to deal with the most terrible churban, and then those who were born after Bichlal, a time of Acheshach Kafel U'Mechupo. And it's not only that he was able to, and not was, but continues to be able to show and reveal the Achdus Hashem in it. Not only to reveal how even despite the Churban, but because of the darkness, and Dafke through the darkness we see the ultimate light, and the ultimate zipiyah, and the ultimate waiting, and the ultimate belief in the kiyum of the nevuah, just like Rabbi Akiva said. In the kiyum of the nevuah, that we see it in the darkness, and the darkness itself shows us and reveals to us and helps us anticipate and live with the anticipation of the greatest Geula and the greatest Yeshua that will come. And this is something which we can take now, and which we have to take now, because it's something which is our job and our mission, to realize that despite no matter what darkness, and no matter what kind of cheshach, kafel, mechupel of ikvis and meshicha, the reality and the truth of emes havaya le'elam. And that truth is not only despite the darkness, but because of the darkness. That's what we see, to the extent that we can all say, Akiva nichamtanu, Akiva nichamtanu, and there's a continuation in Dein Yaakov, another 3 words, Hashem Yenachameinu Amen, means that from the Akiva nichamtanu, we come to the ultimate nechama, that the Eibishter will right away fulfill, that will see the kiyum of the nevuah, that the Rebbe's nevuah, that the Rebbe promised us, Davar echad midvarecha acher layashuv reikam. We'll see it with Einei Basar immediately. This galus of Mashiach, who will take us to the third Beis HaMikdash, and the Eibishter will Yenachameinu Amen.
Amen. Solik will finish the siyum. Amen. 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 Yehi shmei Rav u'mevorach le'olam lo mayo yisborech. Amen. 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 This is also the time to thank the alumni and Talmidim of Rabbi Wagner for the special hard work that they put into the Sefer that came out this week, Sefer Imre Akiva. This is just tipo min hayam from the Shiurim, what he wrote, Talmidim wrote, and Mirz Hashem in the near future and later on will come more and more and more and more Sforim. So Imre Akiva is already available, and we have also, I think we have Sforim here for the Rabbonim of the Shtot and the Anole members, and Hashem should help. We should be Zoiche together very, very soon. Number one, Simches in the family, and Simches by Klal Yisrael, and Simchas Olam al Rosham by the Geula Amitis. That's the video from tonight, please.
Wagner's cure for the Bachrim. Not only on a Shiva level, but even on a very, very Gashmistic level. How the Bachrim, how are they feeling? Are they okay with Gashmias?
After I left Yeshiva, I had emailed Rabbi Wagner about one of the songs he had written, and we had a little conversation, and at the end, he writes, "Was tut sich bei dir? What's doing by you? How's it going? How are you personally?" And you see, he opened the door, he opened that way for a connection, a conversation, and he still cared about his brachim even after they left. A few years later, I had actually emailed him and thanked him for the years I spent in yeshiva, and I had asked him if he had any plans to publish the emails that he sent out every week. And he said, "I actually published for my daughter's wedding as a shura, and I'll find a way to get it to you." And when I opened it up, I saw inside, not only did he send a sefer, but he also, he wrote a personal note inside. It meant so much to me.
The beginning, the first year, was until the yeshiva got off to an established start, things got off to a rocky start, and there was a tekufa. There were no dorm counselors. And the ones that were there left, and they weren't able to get new ones right away. Rabbi Wagner himself became the dorm counselor. He would come around at night, make sure everybody has what they needed, make sure everybody had negel aseh, and then in the morning to come around to schlep us to Seder.
So I remember once in Sherbez, our class is having a bit of a rough time in yeshiva. Sherbez was not enjoying very much. We went to Rabbi Wagner, and he knew what was going on, so he said, "Sure, we'll take care of it. Let's make him a little malcolm." I remember coming to Rabbi Wagner's house in his dining room, and being, aside for the connection of Rosh Yeshivah, of learning Torah, there's also a connection of Rabbi Wagner being there for the Bachrim and caring for the Bachrim.
It was Purim, and Rabbi Wagner gave out Shalach Manas to all the Bachrim, and inside each Shalach Manas was a personal message based on the Bachur's name. So Wagner took different psukim from Torah based on your name and wrote you a personal note. And I remember being absolutely amazed.
At the end of the year, the first month, so we were going to, a lot of Bachram lived in New York, we were going to New York for whatever it was, for a break, for a couple of weeks. We would go down to the bus station and take a Greyhound bus down to New York. So we wanted a ride. So a couple of us went over to Rabbi Wagner. We asked him, "Could you give us a ride to the bus station?" I think about it now. He was in Rosh Yeshivah, he had other things to do. But it seemed like the most natural thing in the world because he was mamish like a parent in that way. That you need a ride, ask him, "Can you give us a ride?" So a couple of us packed into his van. But this was perfectly natural for him in the way to just do whatever the Bachram needed in that way. And he really tried to be there for us in every single way.
Yeah, he's becoming a king because he's doing the act of he's doing the act of
It was after Fabrengen, and Rabbi Wagner to me was this big Rosh Yeshivah. I was coming from LA, and like I didn't really feel like we ever would really have a connection. And so it was Fabrengen, it was getting late, I was tired, and so I wanted to leave. So I started leaving, and Rabbi Wagner turns to me, and he's like, "Herschel." Or Hirsch, that's what he would call me. And I'm like, oh no, he's going to scream at me, tell me off, something, right? He says, so I turn and says, Hirsch, and I remember your father, and we verbring with him, and he starts talking to me about my father, and it was a quick encounter, but right then I felt amazing, I felt picked up. I was a little kid, unnoticed, and here the big Rosh Yeshivah noticed me, and from then on we were very close, and he became my personal mashpia shortly thereafter. And from when I was 17, I would ask Rabbi Wagner all the big decisions in my life. He played an enormous impression on my life. No matter where I was, if I was going through struggles emotionally, spiritually, whatever it was, I always knew that Rabbi Wagner was there, would always be ready to listen, would always be ready to hear me out, I would always have great counsel, could always answer.
Very uniquely, Rabbi Wagner didn't only have a kesher with the Bachram that were very, very learned, or very invested in learning.
His main nekuda was, if I may say, his personal connection that he had with every Bachram. With every single Bachram, he looked to have that personal connection. With some Bachram was through his shir, with some Bachram was through his petirah, and with some Bachram was through his fabringins, and some it was just going over to them and saying a word. It was incredible to have that personal relationship with him, that personal connection with him. We found that we were able to ask him anything and speak to him about anything. I remember that for every Bachar Zimbaledis, he would come in and give him a personalized birthday cake, a little homemade birthday cake, chocolate cake, special for his Zimbaledis. It showed on so much more than just a Rosh Yeshivah that's coming to give a shir. He clocks in and clocks out, but rather by him he was fully invested in the Bachram. He fully cared about the Bachram.
But Wagner didn't sleep. There were times, I remember he had Bachram that he would learn with on a daily basis. Some Bachram, a personal connection. He would go, he would talk to them, he would learn with them, and he would have a personal chavrusa, one-on-one, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. And sometimes, if there was no time to add another Bachar, he'd find time to add another Bachar. There was one Bachar that he had a chavrusa with this Bachar, 4:30 a.m., Thursday night. After he finished learning, and after he finished typing his shiurim and making his shiurim, and after he finished giving a shir down south or to Balabatim up north, whatever it was, he would then sit down with a Bachar and learn with one Bachar, one-on-one. There were times that he went out of town or a Bachar went out of town, and he would make sure to find a way, find a time, figure out how to learn with this Bachar on the time that he's supposed to learn with this Bachar, even though the time zones were 6, 7, 8 hours different.
The very last day of Yeshiva, Shir Beizal, the next day we had an early morning bus to go into New York, and we wanted to have a big fabringen the last day, right? A farewell fabringen. Rabbi Wagner did not want to fabring for us. He wanted to have nothing of it. It was not a special game of the Tager or a special day, and he wasn't going to fabring. So I don't know what time it was, probably 11, maybe even midnight. We decided we're going to go to his house and make sure he comes back to fabring. So we go to his house, and he answers, and yeah, he says, no, he's not verbring. So after some time, he tells us, listen, I'm not going to verbring, but if you want, we can always learn. I have to learn now. Let's learn. So we pull out some Gemaras, and we start learning. Anyways, after some time, of course, the learning lightens up his mood, and he starts sharing stories. Anyways, long story short, the word gets out. Within an hour, it's a huge Fabrengen. The Fabrengen lasts the whole night. And now already it's 5 a.m. or whatever time it was, and we had to go catch our bus. It was leaving in an hour. So we had to stop the Fabrengen. We quickly run to the mikveh, gather our stuff together, and wait outside our dorm for the bus or the van, whatever it was. And who's there to say goodbye and bid us farewell? Rabbi Wagner. And to me, this is the perfect story.
I want to give one last big extra to Akiva